Chapter 692. Densely packed Aeon spirits and malicious ghosts were entrenched in front of them. There were at least 1,000 of them. The scale was so large that it made one speechless. Seeing living creatures like Lin Tian and Fan Xiong approaching, the malicious ghosts immediately let out roars and charged towards the two of them. "Please go to the library." In an instant, thousands of evil spirits and ghosts roared in unison, and the aura of death filled the air. "We're in a ghost lair!" Fan Xiong shrank his neck. It wasn't because he was afraid, but because the scene was too shocking. "Let's go," Lin Tian now said and stepped forward. There were many evil spirits and ghosts here, but with his current state, how could he be afraid? He only took one step, and the ground shook. Dragon patterns flashed and spread along the ground, shattering a large number of evil spirits. Fan Xiong was more direct. His fist was wrapped in a faint circle of divine light. When he punched, dozens of evil spirits and ghosts exploded. It was difficult to kill evil spirits and ghosts with ordinary methods, but it was different after reaching the Immortal Ascension realm. Immortal Ascension cultivators had their true essence turned into divine power. It was very easy to kill evil spirits and ghosts. It was no different from mowing grass. Now, Lin Tian was at the second level of the Immortal Ascension realm, and Fan Xiong was at the first level. They were both very powerful. The evil spirits and ghosts here couldn't stop them. Anyone who got close to them was shattered in the blink of an eye. Boom! Behind them, several waves of shocking divine power surged. Someone rushed over. There were dozens of people in the crowd. 4 young Supremes rushed at the front and landed here in the blink of an eye. Instantly, Aeon soldiers and malicious spirits roared and charged towards the 4 of them. "How dare you be so presumptuous, low-level ghosts!" The young Supremes of the Blood Wolf tribe snorted. He raised his hand and swept out a large patch of bloody light. The evil spirits and ghosts that got close to him were all shattered. At the same time, the young Supremes of the Dark Shadow tribe and the Insect tribe also showed their great power and shattered many evil spirits. "Humans!" the young Supremes of the Ant tribe said coldly. After destroying a group of evil spirits and ghosts, they pressed toward Lin Tian and Fan Xiong with endless demonic light. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He condensed a divine light sword in his hand and swung it backward. Clang! An ear-piercing sword cry reverberated through the air. It carried raging flames and lightning as it directly tore apart the evil radiance that the Ant Clan Young Supreme being released. Then, the sword light didn't slow down at all as it continued to press toward the center of the Ant Clan's Young Supreme being's forehead. F*CKU, I'll smash you to death! Fan Xiong roared. With a punch, the entire space shook. His terrifying physique made many people's hearts tremble. There are almost all the books you want to read. It's much more stable than the average website, and it updates faster. It's all text without advertisements. The young supreme being of the Ant Clan directly activated the Netherbone spiritual fire. Immediately, Fan Xiong's expression changed, and he quickly retreated. His physical body was terrifying, but he knew how terrifying the Netherbone spiritual fire was. It was impossible for him to withstand it with just his physical body. Too late! Destroy it! The young supreme being of the Ant Clan shouted coldly. The dark bone spiritual fire gathered from all directions, blocking all of Fan Xiong's escape routes. Lin Tian tilted his head, and his eyes were cold. He immediately activated the Sun Heart Sutra, and a blazing golden light rose from the surface of his body. Then, using the Medicine Encyclopedia as the foundation, he transformed the golden light into golden flames that condensed on the divine light sword. He then slashed at the Netherbone spiritual fire that was enveloping Fan Xiong. Swish! The golden flames turned into sword aura and landed on the Netherbone spiritual fire that was enveloping Fan Xiong. Immediately, a large part of it was annihilated, allowing Fan Xiong to escape unscathed. Thank you, Brother Lin! Fan Xiong wiped off his cold sweat. It was really dangerous just now. If Lin Tian hadn't intervened, he would have been drowned by the Netherbone spiritual fire. At that time, he would have been in trouble. The young supreme being of the ant clan stared at Lin Tian coldly. The murderous intent in his eyes was like a raging ocean. At this moment, in a deeper place, the seven-colored divine light flashed again. It was much brighter than before, and it seemed to be calling for something. The eyes of the young supreme being of the Blood Wolf tribe and the others flashed. Without hesitation, the divine power outside of their bodies became more powerful. They crushed all the ghost soldiers in front of them and quickly rushed toward the seven-colored divine light. "The treasure will belong to me," the young supreme being of the Bug clan said evilly. At this moment, the young supreme being of the Ant clan no longer attacked Lin Tian and Fan Ningxiong. At this moment, obtaining the treasure was the most important thing. Lin Tian's eyes flashed and became extremely bright. The familiar wave that he felt was even stronger. "Let's go!" He called Fan Ningxiong and also rushed into the depths. Fan Ningxiong followed behind him, crushing ghost soldiers and ghosts along the way. Soon, they appeared in front of a huge hinterland. In this place, the ground was filled with white bones. They were piled up one by one, and it was a ghastly sight. The young supreme being of the Blood Wolf tribe and the others didn't hesitate. After arriving here, they stepped on the dense white bones and ran all the way into the depths. Everyone's eyes were shining brightly, and the aura outside of their bodies became more powerful. Lin Tian naturally wouldn't stop. His speed was shockingly fast. He carried Fan Ningxiong and rushed into the depths with a single step. Behind them, some powerful cultivators also rushed over. All of them were independent cultivators of the immortal realm. Their strength was very impressive. Roar! At this moment, the ghostly howl from before came from the depths again. It made one's scalp tingle. As this ghostly howl sounded, the white bones on the ground in the hinterland trembled. Suddenly, all of them seemed to have come to life. In an instant, they stood upright and attacked the group of people. This change shocked everyone. Some of the cultivators were caught off guard and had their chests cut open. In the blink of an eye, several immortal realm cultivators were drowned by the army of white bones. Their bodies were torn into pieces. "Get lost!" The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow tribe shouted coldly. A shadow-like light flashed past like the light of a divine ability. It shattered a large number of white bones on the spot. They were all turned into white bone powder and fell to the ground. His combat power was extremely strong. At the same time, the young supreme beings of the insect tribe attacked and destroyed the army of white bones. They stepped on the bone powder and rushed into the depths. Golden divine light intertwined around Lin Tian's body. With a swing of the divine light sword in his hand, the army of white bones in front of him was shattered. With a swing of the sword, he opened a path paved with white bone powder. Like a bolt of golden lightning, he disappeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. Soon, he and Fan Ningxiong finally arrived at the depths. Up ahead, 8 rotting corpses were charging at a gorgeous screen of light. An extremely terrifying mist of death coiled around their bodies, corroding the space around them with sizzling sounds. The powerful Inchi caused one's heart to turn cold, causing many people to feel a chill run down their backs. "Ghost lords? They are comparable to great virtue realm cultivators. The ghostly howl just now was released by them." The crowd trembled. The group of cultivators didn't dare to approach recklessly. With 8 ghost lords comparable to great virtue realm cultivators in front of them, who would dare to court death? "There seems to be something in that light screen," someone said. The light screen was hazy and difficult to see through at a glance. However, those who could come here were not weaklings. After a serious look, they finally saw through the scene inside. In the center of the light screen, a huge altar was laid horizontally. It was completely formed by skulls and had a diameter of about 30 feet. In the center, there was a fist-sized 7-colored light source. It's the 7-colored light from just now. It's definitely a treasure," many people said excitedly. Lin Tian was the most excited. The divine light in his eyes instantly became extremely intense. It was indeed the 4th sword soul fragment. Boom! Shocking divine energy instantly surged. The young supreme being of the ant tribe was the first to rush forward and step toward the light screen. Humph! The young supreme being of the blood wolf tribe snorted coldly. He took a step forward, and the sanguinary light drowned out all directions. At the same time, the young supreme beings of the insect tribe and the dark shadow tribe also made their moves. The light of their supernatural powers surged forward violently. These few people were extremely powerful. They were all existences that could kill half-step great virtue realm cultivators. At this moment, even though there were 8 ghost lords comparable to great virtue realm cultivators in front of them, the 4 of them were not afraid at all. They directly rushed forward and released a large amount of killing light. They wanted to fight for the 7-colored light source in the center of the light screen. Lin Tian naturally wouldn't hesitate. He took a step forward and went straight for the sword soul fragment in the center of the light screen. When Fan Xiong saw Lin Tian rushing forward, he didn't stop either. He quickly followed beside Lin Tian. The 8 ghost lords that were attacking the light screen had demonic red eyes. Their bodies were covered in rotting flesh. When they saw people approaching, they immediately let out ear-piercing ghostly howls. The black fog of death was like the Milky Way in the 9 heavens, crazily attacking the 6 people in front. Things that are already dead should just die, the young supreme being of the ant tribe said coldly. The dark-boned spiritual fire appeared in a flash and directly drowned out the black fog of death, burning it into nothingness. The young supreme beings of the blood wolf tribe also displayed their skills and blocked the terrifying black fog of death. They were also closing in on them. So powerful! As expected of the young supreme beings. Even the ghost lords comparable to great virtue realm cultivators can't do anything to them. Someone's heart trembled. It was also at this moment that an ear-piercing scream rang out. Lin Tian released the yin-yang lotus sea and directly annihilated the black fog of death in front of him. He condensed a lotus flower sword and sent a ghost lord flying. Green smoke appeared on the surface of his body. Oh my god, he sent a ghost lord comparable to a great virtue realm cultivator flying? That seems to be the legendary spiritual sea phenomenon? He comprehended the spiritual sea phenomenon. Many people's hearts palpitated. Lin Tian's glabella flickered. The 4th sword soul fragment was right in front of him. He didn't hesitate and directly released the yin-yang lotus sea phenomenon. Such a phenomenon naturally countered all evil. With his current 2nd tier cultivation, even if he encountered a ghost lord, he wouldn't be afraid. He directly sent a ghost lord flying and came to the edge of the light screen, preparing to break through it. You're courting death! Get lost! This treasure belongs to me! A cold shout rang out. The young supreme beings of the ant tribe and the insect tribe attacked together. 4 killing lights pressed down together. Lin Tian's expression changed instantly. He felt a chill run down his spine and quickly moved a few 100 feet away. 4 young supreme beings who could kill a half-step great virtue realm cultivator attacked together. Even someone as powerful as him didn't dare to take it head-on. Boom! The 4 attacks landed on the light screen, causing it to tremble violently. The scene inside became clearer. There seems to be a complete purple skeleton on the altar. Someone pointed forward. The crowd looked over at the same time, and then they were all shocked. There was indeed a complete purple skeleton on the skull altar. A purple skeleton, a purple skeleton. This seems to be something only the Bone Tribe has. Moreover, it must be a Bone Tribe cultivator who has reached the peak of the Enlightenment realm. Could it be an ancestor of the Bone Tribe? I remember now. That skull altar seems to be some kind of secret sacrificial technique of the Bone Tribe. A terrifying Enlightenment realm ancestor of the Bone Tribe entered here and died here? It seems that the purple skeleton activated the skull altar. It seemed to want to use this technique to take away the colorful light source, but in the end, it failed. It was exhausted to death on the skull altar. The crowd was shocked. At this moment, an extremely powerful fluctuation of divine power came from afar. A deified consciousness howl spread from afar. Who dares to intrude into the Bone Tribe's secret ground? Chapter 693. Genius 1 second memorize, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Lin Tian was determined to get the Sword Soul Fragment. He also knew that when he got the Sword Soul Fragment, no one could do anything to him, while the Sword Soul Fragment merged with the Divine Sword. It was the same for the previous few times. Therefore, he began to think about other things. It would take some time for the Sword Soul Fragment to merge with the Divine Sword. During this process, the young ant tribe Supreme Being and the others could not do anything to him. However, the culprit was still here. He knew very well that with these people's habits, they would definitely turn against Fanning Xiong and even use him to threaten him. Therefore, before he went to get the Sword Soul Fragment, he solemnly sent a voice transmission to Fanning Xiong and asked him to leave. At this time, Fanning Xiong was already far away from the ancient ruins. At this time, he was standing inside the seven-colored barrier, with strands of seven-colored light intertwining around his body. He stared at the young ant tribe Supreme Being and the others with a cold smile with a sense of ridicule and disdain. You! The ant clan's young Supreme Being and the others all stared at Lin Tian cruelly. At the same time, ghostly howls rang out one after another. The 8 ghost lords continued to charge forward, wanting to shatter the seven-colored barrier. However, they were sent flying again and again. After more than 10 times, the 8 ghost lords were on the brink of death, unable to stand up again. They had suffered unimaginable injuries when charging at the seven-colored barrier. That handsome young man, he got the treasure. The treasure, it created a protective barrier. It's a shocking treasure. A group of cultivators stared at this scene in shock. The young ant tribe Supreme Being and the others shot out killing lights again, but it was useless. They were all blocked by the seven-colored barrier. What should we do? Are we just going to watch him take the treasure? The young Blood Wolf tribe Supreme Being asked. Impossible! The young insect tribe Supreme Being's eyes were sinister. The ant tribe's young supremacy's eyes were cold and filled with boundless killing intent. That seven-colored light source is undoubtedly a rare treasure. Even if such a treasure is fused into his body, it will take some time for him to completely control it. It is impossible for him to control it immediately. Staring ahead, the young ant tribe Supreme Being continued. The treasure overflowed with energy to form a protective barrier, but this barrier will eventually break. We will wait here and kill him later. Several young Supreme Beings nodded in agreement. At the same time, they stared coldly at Lin Tian, who was behind the rainbow barrier. Within the seven-colored barrier, Lin Tianling smiled as he glanced at the 4 experts. His left hand was behind his back, and his 5 fingers began to dance. For a moment, the faint soul light quietly blended into the void under the cover of the seven-colored radiance. At the same time, he began to circulate the Sun Heart Sutra. The Sword Soul Fragment entered his body and floated into his sea of consciousness, slowly merging with the Divine Sword. During this process, strands of seven-colored light intertwined and fell into his body. At this time, he channeled the Sun Heart Sutra, guiding the seven-colored light to temper his divine power. At the same time, he used the divine power to forge his own physique, creating a physical body that could comprehend and bear the great Tao. Buzz! Dazzling golden light circled around his body, and his aura rose little by little. This golden light carried a divine and dignified aura, causing some of the powerful immortal conduit realm itinerant cultivators to be moved. What a brilliant golden light! I'm afraid his cultivation method is not simple. It's very strong. I have the same feeling, many people said. The 4 supremes of the ant clan narrowed their eyes, or there was a cold light in their eyes. They just stared coldly at Lin Tianling. Lin Tianling also stared at the 4 experts. His eyes were indifferent, and at the same time, there was a kind of disdain and sarcasm. This undoubtedly caused the 4 experts' faces to turn even colder. Arrogant dog! The supremes of the ant clan said coldly. Once the seven-colored barrier disappears, only death awaits him. The supremes of the insect clan said sinisterly. The supremes of the Blood Wolf clan and Dark Shadow clan didn't speak again. They just looked at Lin Tianling coldly. Lin Tianji sneered. While circulating the Sun Heart Sutra, he kept his left hand behind his back, and strands of soul light streaked out. Buzz! Golden light intertwined on the surface of his body, and his aura kept rising. In the blink of an eye, 10 hours had passed. 10 hours later, the sword soul fragment had completely merged, and the golden light outside his body gradually weakened. At this moment, his cultivation had reached the peak of the second level of the connecting immortal realm, and he was only one step away from the third level of the connecting immortal realm. His combat strength had increased a little. In his sea of consciousness, the divine sword moved slightly, and slowly sank into the bottom of his sea of consciousness, and became quiet. Chi! With a crisp sound, the seven-colored barrier outside his body shattered. In an instant, 4 killing intents swept across. Kill him first! After killing him, we'll talk about who gets the treasure, the Supremes of the Dark Shadow clan said coldly. Of course. The Supremes of the Blood Wolf clan nodded. The Supremes of the Ant clan and Insect clan didn't say anything. They directly pressed toward Lin Tianling, and black and green demonic lights surged together. The 4 Supremes of the Young Supremes are ganging up on him? Many people's hearts trembled. 4 tyrannical and cold waves surged. In the blink of an eye, the 4 experts stepped in front of Lin Tianling. Die! The Supremes of the Ant clan had a cruel look in his eyes. He directly activated the Supremes of the Ant clan. The other 3 Supremes of the Young Supremes naturally didn't hold back. They each activated the secret techniques of their clans and charged toward Lin Tianling. With a crack, a large part of the space in this place collapsed on the spot. This was a terrifying momentum. The 4 Supremes of the Young Supremes who could kill a half-step Great Path expert attacked together. It was really not a joke. Many people felt that even if a Great Path expert came, he or she would have to frown deeply at this moment. Lin Tianling stood where he was. He was at the center of the 4 Supremes' attack, and he immediately felt a fatal threat. However, his expression didn't change at all. He didn't panic or fear at all. You guys are really fast, he sneered. At this moment, he put his left hand, which was behind his back, in front of him. He formed a seal with one hand, and the soul light suddenly became blazing. Boom! The soaring killing intent was vast and mighty. Suddenly, heaven and earth shook as if the entire ancient relic was about to collapse. This part of the void was instantly covered by a destructive force. The killing intent was boiling like the sea. Thousands of killing light pillars as thick as an arm soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the Supremes of the Ant clan and the others were shattered. You! The expressions of the 4 Supremes changed. This killing intent made even people as strong as them feel a great threat. At this moment, with Lin Tianling as the center, countless complicated patterns appeared in the void. They devoured all the spiritual energy in this ancient relic and turned it into rays of destructive killing light. These are formation patterns. It's a killing formation. He knows formations. He can inscribe a killing formation? And he can even inscribe a killing formation in the void. There were still many cultivators in this place. All of them were powerful existences in the connecting immortal realm. When Lin Tianling was fusing with the sword soul fragment, they didn't leave because they knew that the Supremes of the Ant clan and the others wouldn't let this go. They wanted to see how the situation developed. Moreover, some people also had the idea of taking advantage of the situation. At this moment, seeing this scene in front of them, the expressions of many people changed. Looking at the dense killing light pillars in front of them, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their backs. Crack! 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 The void shattered and collapsed inch by inch. At this moment, it was as if it was made of paper. Lin Tianling stood where he was. His eyes were cold, but there was a cold smile on the corner of his mouth. He had long known that after the fusion of the sword soul fragments, the 4 of them would definitely attack him at the same time. No matter how powerful he was, it was impossible for him to fight against 4 supreme youths by himself. Therefore, during the fusion process, he quietly carved a corner of the eternal killing array. Now that he was in the second heaven of the connecting immortal realm, he had a deeper understanding of the eternal killing formation. 10 hours was enough for him to inscribe a corner of such a killing formation. At this moment, the killing formation was activated. The astonishing killing power formed a powerful space confinement barrier, completely isolating the surroundings and trapping the four supremes of the young supremes in it. Moreover, with his current cultivation of the second heaven of the connecting immortal realm, the corner of the eternal killing formation he set up was far more powerful than the one he set up when he broke into the Bai family. Now, he had completely comprehended this corner of the eternal killing formation. Moreover, he inscribed it with a cultivation that was far more powerful than before. It was enough to kill an ordinary half-step to the great Tao. Despicable! The Blood Wolf Tribe Supreme said. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. With a shift of his mind, dozens of eternal killing lights slashed out. The four of you attacked me together. Are you qualified to say such words? He said. The Blood Wolf Tribe Supreme's face was cold, and his eyes were even colder. There was a bloodthirsty killing light intertwined. He used his great magic and disintegrated the dozens of eternal killing formations that were coming at him. However, he was forced to retreat, looking a little embarrassed. Not bad. As expected of the Supremes of the young Supremes who can kill half-step to the great Tao. You are indeed powerful to be able to block these killing lights. Lin Tian's expression was indifferent, and he seemed a little ruthless. He smiled coldly and said, Then, let's continue. As his words fell, this corner of the eternal killing formation became boiling. The killing lights roared like divine swords. Clang! 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 The dense killing lights vibrated together, and crazily flooded the four Supremes of the young Supremes. The four Supremes of the young Supremes' expressions changed, but their eyes were cruel. At the same time, they supported the powerful magic of their respective clans to resist. For a time, all kinds of secret techniques were used. Although they were a little embarrassed, they still managed to resist the killing lights steadily. Do you really think that you can stop us with just a killing formation? What a joke! The Ant Tribe Supreme's eyes were cold. With a boom, a copper seal rushed out of its body. Terrifying fluctuations immediately intertwined, causing the killing light and the surroundings to be somewhat affected. This is a Dao soldier? A middle-grade Dao soldier! Everyone's expression changed as they stared at the copper seal. Humph! A cold snort sounded. The Blood Wolf Tribe Supreme's eyes were cruel. He held up a blood saber that had strange patterns intertwined on it. A Dao soldier level saber is also a middle-grade Dao soldier. Someone's heart trembled. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, two other powerful fluctuations spread. The Dark Shadow Tribe Supremes took out a black shield that was surrounded by black light. The Insect Tribe Supremes took out a dagger that was intertwined with green light. The power they exuded was not weaker than the Ant Tribe Supreme's copper seal and Blood Wolf Tribe Supreme's blood saber. This copper seal, blood saber, black shield, and that dagger, for middle-grade Dao soldiers. The crowd was horrified. Chapter 694. Genius 1 second. Remember, I'll provide you with exciting novels to read. The reincarnation diagram was vast and mighty as it spun slowly. As soon as it appeared, it emitted wisps of resplendent light that interweaved with brightness, holiness, and vastness. At this moment, he used the divine fire furnace to protect his body and used the king's territory with all his might to face the four of them at the same time. Boom! In an instant, 5 different kinds of divine abilities collided together, and an unparalleled light flooded in all directions. Ka! 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 The void cracked inch by inch, and after 10 breaths, the 5 of them were sent flying at the same time. The young Supreme Venerable of the Ant race, and the other 3 coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. Their divine abilities were destroyed, and their clothes were tattered. At the same time, Lin Tian didn't gain any advantage either. He was fighting against 4 alone, and even with the protection of the divine fire furnace, he was still severely injured. He felt that his internal organs had cracked, and blood kept flowing out of the corners of his mouth. However, his eyes were still cold. At the moment when he was sent flying, he roared in his heart and stabilized his body. Again! He hollered coldly and stared straight at the young Supreme Venerable of the ant race. With a whoosh, he endured the intense pain in his body and stepped on the yin and yang ho to force his way towards the young Supreme Venerable of the ant race. During this process he formed a seal with both hands, and with a buzz, he once again supported the reincarnation diagram of the king's territory. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the young Supreme Venerable of the ant race. Buzz! The reincarnation diagram flickered and was held in his right hand as he pressed it down towards the young Supreme Venerable of the ant race. The young Supreme Venerable of the ant race's expression changed. Before he could stabilize his body, Lin Tian had already pressed over. For a moment, he didn't even have the chance to use his divine abilities. He had no choice but to summon the nether bone's spiritual fire in a panic and defend himself with a mid-grade Dao weapon. Kill! Lin Tian shouted. His eyes were cold, and the divine fire furnace vibrated to block the middle-grade Dao weapon. The reincarnation diagram in his right hand pressed down mercilessly. The copper seal was entangled by the divine fire furnace and collapsed. Then, the nether bone's spiritual fire was annihilated wherever the reincarnation diagram passed. The young Supreme Venerable of the ant race's expression immediately changed. Human, die! Lin Tian's eyes were emotionless. The light emitted by the reincarnation diagram became even brighter. It broke through the dark bone's spiritual fire and pressed down on the body of the young Supreme Being of the ant tribe. Literature building. Ah! A miserable cry sounded, extremely ear-piercing. It came from the mouth of the ant clan's young Supreme Being. However, in the next moment, this sound completely disappeared. Lin Tian pressed down with the reincarnation scroll, crushing the young ant clan's supremacy into pieces. He flew over and grabbed the middle-grade Dao soldier-level copper seal, wiping away the ant clan's supremacy's divine sense imprint on it. It all happened too quickly. Only after another breath's worth of time did the cultivators there react. Instantly, they all trembled violently. The young Supreme Being of the ant clan was dead. A young Supreme Being was killed. Everyone's expression changed drastically. The young Supreme of the ant race was an existence that could kill half-step great Dao powerhouses. He was known as one of the future rulers of the fourth heaven. Now that he was killed in this place, many people felt a chill run down their spines. They couldn't help but shiver. The ant race will go crazy. Many people's hearts palpitated. At this time, the three supreme beings of the Blood Wolf clan had just stabilized their bodies. Like the other cultivators, their expressions changed in shock. In such a short time, the young supreme being of the ant race was killed. Lin Tian tilted his head. The corners of his mouth were stained with blood, but his eyes were extremely cold. It's your turn, he said coldly. With a shift of his mind, the eternal killing matrix boiled in an instant. A large expanse of eternal killing light hummed like divine swords, uniformly slashing towards the three young supreme beings who were still alive. Clang! The killing light was like a giant sword of death, slashing down densely, causing the space to collapse on the spot. The three supreme beings of the Blood Wolf clan didn't dare to be careless. They used their respective middle-grade Dao weapons to protect their bodies, blocking the eternal killing light. At the same time, they once again activated their powerful secret techniques, suppressing Lin Tian. Lin Tian's eyes were indifferent. He took a step forward and activated the weapon control technique to the limit. The hundreds of immortal weapons let out a clanging sound. Chi! 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 He used all his strength and used the weapon control technique to shatter the three supreme beings' secret techniques. Then, he raised the reincarnation diagram again and stepped towards the three supreme beings. The three supreme beings all retreated. This divine diagram made their hearts tremble. Just now, Lin Tian had used this diagram to disintegrate their attacks and reap the life of the supreme being of the ant race. Aren't all of you supreme beings? Aren't you able to kill half-step great Dao cultivators? Now that you've joined forces to deal with me, you still know how to retreat? Lin Tian mocked. His eyes were indifferent. The reincarnation diagram shook, and multicolored light filled the sky. The three Supreme Beings' eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Don't be so smug. If you walk out of here, you will be surrounded by the entire ant race, the Supreme Being of the Blood Wolf clan said coldly. Lin Tian tilted his head. Instantly, hundreds of eternal killing lights flooded towards the Supreme Being of the Blood Wolf clan. You said this because you think that you will all die here, and I will be able to walk out of here unscathed. The Supreme Being of the Blood Wolf clan was speechless. He originally wanted to suppress Lin Tian's arrogance, but he didn't expect Lin Tian to interpret his words in this way. This made his face turn a little pale, and the killing intent in his eyes intensified. A bloodthirsty light flickered in his eyes. He once again activated his clan's secret technique. Together with the mid-grade Dao soldier level blood blade, he broke through the eternal killing lights and slashed towards Lin Tian. At the same time, the Supreme Being of the Insect race and the Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow clan attacked together. They each sent their killing lights towards Lin Tian. Lin Tian snorted. The reincarnation diagram flickered and raised the four symbols seal at the same time. The four symbols Dao diagram was vast and mighty. It pressed down from the front and crushed a large amount of killing lights. Then, the reincarnation diagram followed. Boom! In the void, strands of eternal killing patterns pulsated. More killing lights were formed, splitting the space and crushing the earth. Lin Tian stepped forward. The divine fire cauldron protected his body. The four symbols Dao diagram annihilated the divine power secret technique, and the reincarnation diagram followed closely behind. At this time, the dense eternal killing lights accompanied him. They intertwined in all directions and slashed towards the three Supreme Beings. It could be said that this corner of the killing array had helped him a lot. If not for this, it would be impossible for him to fight against several Supreme Beings with his own strength. Even if he had an upper-grade Dao soldier, it wouldn't be enough. After all, the power of an upper-grade Dao soldier and a mid-grade Dao soldier was actually not much different. It would definitely not be the key factor that determined the outcome of the battle. Boom! There was a shocking collision. Lin Tian used the divine fire cauldron to deal with the mid-grade Dao soldiers of the three Supreme Beings. He used the four symbols Dao diagram to annihilate the three Supreme Beings' divine power secret technique. Then, he attacked with the eternal killing lights and the reincarnation diagram. The momentum of his attack was as smooth as flowing water. This is so powerful! Where the hell did this person come from? The crowd of cultivators trembled in fear. As far as the eye could see, Lin Tian's black hair danced in the wind as he fought against several Supreme Beings alone. Although his clothes were already stained with blood, he didn't show any signs of weakness. He was like the reincarnation of an ancient war god. The more he fought, the braver he became. He was unstoppable. Boom! 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 The four Supreme Beings collided. Demonic lights and divine energy clashed. Dao soldiers from various sects clashed. Fist and leg shadows clashed. Rumbling sounds like the beating of drums rang out, causing many cultivators in this area to involuntarily retreat. Some even covered their ears. Lin Tian stepped on the yin and yang liang, leaving behind afterimages with each step. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the Supreme Being from the Blood Wolf tribe and pressed down with a punch. Bang! This punch steadily landed on the Supreme Being's chest. It immediately caved in the Supreme Being's chest. He coughed out blood and flew away. Die! A sinister voice rang out. The Supreme Being from the insect tribe waved his halberd and seized the opportunity to pierce Lin Tian's abdomen. Stinking bug! Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He didn't care about the halberd in his body at all and directly punched his opponent's cheek. With a bang, the Supreme Being from the insect tribe was sent flying. He coughed out blood and steadied himself in the distance. Wiping off the blood at the corner of his mouth, the Supreme Being from the insect tribe revealed an extremely sinister look. The halberd formed by the god-devouring bug pierced your body. The god-devouring bug will merge into your body and soon devour your flesh and blood. As soon as he finished speaking, the halberd shattered. Lin Tian immediately felt that there were many things in his body. They were surging inside his body and crazily biting his flesh and blood. Waves of intense pain came from him. Have a good taste of the pain of having your flesh and blood devoured. The supreme being from the insect tribe laughed sinisterly. However, in the next moment, his expression changed. Lin Tian instantly appeared in front of him and fiercely punched him again. You! Bang! The supreme being from the insect tribe was sent flying again. Half of his face was almost smashed, and blood flowed out. Lin Tian's expression was cold. The black hair in front of his forehead danced in the wind. A bunch of rotten bugs that can't be exposed. How dare you call yourself a god-devouring bug? How dare you act so presumptuously in my body? With a boom, the Sun Heart Sutra was activated. The blazing golden light turned into a towering divine flame that covered every inch of his body. In the blink of an eye, the divine bugs that had invaded his body were burned to ashes. Again! He shouted coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the killing light of the eternal killing array instantly soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, dozens of killing swords were formed. These dozens of killing swords were completely formed by the interweaving of dense killing lights. The supreme being from the Blood Wolf tribe and the supreme being from the insect tribe felt their hearts skip a beat. The supreme being from the Dark Shadow tribe, who had just rushed over to kill Lin Tian, stopped in his tracks and narrowed his eyes. Dozens of killing swords, each of which was several feet long, intertwined with a terrifying power. The three experts felt a great threat. Kill! It was also at this moment that Lin Tian said coldly. The dozens of killing swords clanged loudly and pressed down on the three supreme beings. This was a terrifying attack. The supreme being from the Blood Wolf tribe and the other two did not dare to be careless. They attacked together. The three middle-grade Dao weapons vibrated at the same time. They were like three suns, erupting with the most powerful aura. Together with the attack of the three supreme beings, they went toward the dozens of eternal killing swords. Add one more! Lin Tian said coldly. With a buzz, he propped up the strange phenomenon in his sea of consciousness. The yin-yang lotus sea swayed and pressed forward with the dozens of killing swords. Chapter 695. The yin-yang lotus sea swayed, and the black and white lotus petals fluttered. Although they were not swords, they were more like swords. The three supremes from the Blood Wolf tribe were shocked again. They used more secret techniques to block the attack, and the three middle-grade Dao weapons became more powerful. Kill! Lin Tian only had one word. It was bone-chilling. All kinds of killing lights intertwined. In an instant, the void shook, and the violent aura made everyone's heart tremble. Bang! 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 In the end, the three supremes from the Blood Wolf tribe were sent flying. They were all seriously injured, and they were in a sorry state. Lin Tian's body shook. Although he was protected by the divine fire furnace, he was still seriously injured. Blood gushed out of his mouth again. He gritted his teeth and stepped forward without stopping. The reincarnation map and the yin-yang lotus sea pressed down on the three supremes. Now, he did not have much divine power left. He had to attack faster and more fiercely. Boom! The reincarnation map shook, and the yin-yang lotus sea swayed. Together with the eternal killing formation, another round of terrifying attacks was launched. The faces of the Blood Wolf tribe's young supremacy and the others turned ugly. They were very powerful, but because of the eternal killing array, they were restricted everywhere. Now, they were extremely weak, with less than 20% of the strength in their bodies. Damn it! The supremes from the Blood Wolf tribe's eyes were cold. Kill! The supremes from the insect tribe roared. The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow race transformed into a sky full of black shadows. Each of the black shadows was a Dao-level divine ability. In an instant, an even more shocking battle unfolded. Terrifying energy waves spread out in all directions. These people! Some cultivators were shocked. At this time, even though there was the eternal killing formation suppressing the surroundings, these cultivators were still shocked by the battle between these few people. That kind of divine might was too terrifying. Many people couldn't help but retreat, fearing that a killing light would suddenly fly out. Boom! 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 In the fierce collision, the light of destruction flew everywhere. Lin Tian fought against the three supremes. Most of his clothes were dyed red with blood. It was the blood of his enemies, and also his own blood. He took a step forward. His chest was injured by the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan, but his face was as cold as snow. He condensed a divine light sword in his hand and pierced through his opponent. At the same time, the yin-yang lotus petals pierced through space and entered the foreheads of the Blood Wolf tribe and Insect tribe supremes. The two supremes immediately screamed and staggered backwards. For a moment, the three powerhouses were in an extremely sorry state. They were all furious and couldn't help but roar loudly. At this time, they had less than 10% of their strength left. Kill him with one strike! Behind the Blood Wolf tribe's young supreme martial artist, a palace appeared. Terrifying wolf howls came from within, and a dense pack of blood wolves rushed out. Transform into hell blood wolves and devour people! Earth devouring! Devouring Tao! Devour the heavens! Insect see! The young insect race supreme being shouted loudly. Numerous poisonous insects rushed out of his body, making one scalp go numb. Shadow strike! The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan formed a strange hand seal, and the entire space turned pitch black. There were black shadows everywhere. 3 ultimate killing moves. I'll crush you! Lin Tian only had these 4 words. He used the divine fire cauldron to protect his body, and the divining divine technique created dozens of avatars that pressed towards the 3 powerhouses. At the same time, the eternal killing array, the reincarnation diagram of the monarch territory, and the yin-yang lotus sea were all performed together. Boom! An earth-shattering collision caused the void to collapse, and the ground to shatter. With a crack, the eternal killing pattern in the void shattered, and a destructive airflow immediately gushed out and spread in all directions. The expressions of the cultivators changed drastically. He's here! Retreat! Someone shouted and ran away. The destructive power was too terrifying. Although it was only the aftermath, it still made these cultivators feel terrified. Bang! 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 At the center of the destructive airflow, 4 figures were sent flying. All of them coughed out blood and rolled dozens of feet away. They were all in a sorry state. The young supreme martial artist of the Blood Wolf tribe had an arm hanging down, and all the bones in it were shattered. The young supreme martial artist of the insect race had bloody holes all over his body, and blood kept flowing out. The body of the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow tribe was full of cracks, and one could even vaguely see his heart. At this moment, the 3 of them propped themselves up. Their expressions were ugly, and they quickly used the Heart Sutra to repair their damaged bodies. Clang! The sound of the sword was ear-piercing. In the distance, Lin Tian stood up. His injuries were not much better than the 3 young supreme martial artists, and his whole body was dyed red with blood. However, his eyes were still cold, and he did not care about his injuries at all. He directly condensed the divine light sword in his hand, and with every step he took, he left behind bloody footprints on the ground and pressed towards the 3 of them. So scary! Some cultivators trembled. They looked over and saw that Lin Tian's face was very pale, and he was clearly seriously injured, but his eyes were terrifyingly cold. He was pressing towards the 3 powerhouses step by step, as if he was the Grim Reaper who had stepped out of hell. Such a scene made even the 3 young supreme martial artists change their expressions. Lunatic! Beast! The young supreme martial artist of the Blood Wolf tribe cursed in a low voice. His opponent was clearly injured, but he still dared to press towards the 3 of them in such a strong manner. The young supreme martial artist of the insect tribe had a cruel look in his eyes. He clenched his fists and wanted to rush up, but in the end, he restrained himself. "Next time, I'll take your dog head." After saying this, the young supreme martial artist of the insect tribe turned around and fled towards the outside of the ancient ruins. "I'll spare your dog life for now," the young supreme martial artist of the blood wolf tribe shouted and retreated together. The young supreme martial artist of the dark shadow tribe did not say anything. He glanced at Lin Tian sinisterly and retreated together with the other two powerhouses. The three young supreme martial artists originally wanted to rush up and fight again. They wanted to kill Lin Tian and seize the treasure, but their current situation was very bad. They had less than 10% of their strength, and they were exhausted. Moreover, the three of them knew that even if they could kill Lin Tian in the end, at least one of them would die here. They were not of the same race, so none of them wanted to die. They did not dare to gamble with their lives, and they did not want to die early like the young supreme martial artist of the Ant tribe. "Aren't you known as the young supreme martial artists of the same generation? Why are you running away?" Lin Tian's voice was cold. He raised his leg, and the divine light sword in his hand condensed dozens of killing lights. He endured the pain in his body and slashed out, chasing after the three of them. The clanging sound was endless. The sword radiance cut through the void, and at the same time, it opened up a transparent bloody hole in the three of them. "You bastard! Damn you! You won't live long! Get out of here! Soon, you will die miserably!" The three roars came from afar. The four young supreme martial artists fought together against one person, but in the end, one of them was killed. Moreover, the three of them were forced to flee in such a sorry state. How humiliating was this! It would be a stain on their lives. Lin Tian stepped down. After slashing out dozens of sword radiances, he finally stopped, and his body shook violently. Blood gushed out of his mouth, and his face was already very pale. At this time, he was powerless to continue chasing. He stared in the direction that the three of them escaped. The intertwining cold light in his eyes finally calmed down. He had to admit that these people were really very strong. If he had not secretly engraved a corner of the eternal killing formation and had the help of a high-grade Dao weapon, facing these people at the same time, the outcome would definitely be different. He would have escaped from this place. He tilted his head and looked over. There were still many cultivators here, and all of them were staring at him. This made him frown slightly. This frown immediately caused many people to tremble and involuntarily retreat. We were just surprised. We didn't want to steal your treasures," someone hurriedly explained, afraid that Lin Tian would misunderstand that they were planning to kill him and steal his treasures. At this time, looking over, although Lin Tian's aura was already very weak, the scene just now still echoed in front of their eyes. He fought 4 young supreme martial artists alone, killed one of them, and scared the other 3 away. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a person? Lin Tian didn't say anything. He looked away and looked at the few ghost lords in the distance. Previously, they kept attacking the 7-colored barrier formed when the sword soul fused with the divine sword and suffered an unimaginable backlash. It seemed that the eerie ghostly aura on their bodies was disappearing bit by bit, as if they wouldn't exist for long. He was once again shocked by the terrifying power of the divine sword in his sea of consciousness. It was only a barrier formed when fusing with the sword soul fragment, but it could cause such terrifying destructive power. In the end, he shook his head and didn't look at the 8 ghost lords anymore. He activated the Heart Sutra of Sun to heal his injured body. Buzz! As the Heart Sutra of Sun was activated, strands of golden divine light interweaved on the surface of his body, causing his injuries to heal at an extremely fast speed. His aura also gradually became stronger. In this way, 2 hours passed very quickly. At this time, his injuries were more than half healed. He no longer activated the Heart Sutra of Sunday. He glanced at the skull altar behind him and turned to walk out of the ruins. It wasn't until he was far away that the cultivators in this place finally let out a sigh of relief. He's finally gone! To be able to make it this far, these people's cultivation and strength weren't low. However, when they faced Lin Tian just now, they felt as though they couldn't breathe. Every one of them was trembling with fear. Only now did they feel much better. He actually killed the young paragon of the ant tribe. The ant tribe will definitely go crazy. That was a rare peerless genius in this tribe for thousands of years, but now, it seems that his techniques and spells are not like any other tribe in this heavenly region. Where did he come from? Many people whispered. Forget it, let's not care anymore. It's better to explore this ruin in detail. Perhaps there are other treasures, someone said. Instantly, many people's eyes lit up. That's right. This ancient ruin was so big. There might be other treasures. Immediately, the group of cultivators began to move. They began to search around, hoping to find some treasures. Lin Tian left the depths of the ruin. His steps were steady, and he had already walked far away. In front of him, there was a blood river with rolling waves that interweaved with a murderous aura. He rose into the air and held up a divine light screen. He flew straight to the other side of the blood river, preparing to leave this ancient ruin. During this process, he could not help but smile. He had just entered the heavenly region, and he had already found the fourth sword soul fragment. This was naturally something that made him happy. At this moment, a glimmer of light flashed in the distance, and immediately attracted his attention. That's the psychic jade that I saw at the beginning? Chapter 696. The jade was sparkling and translucent. It flashed in the upper reaches of the blood river, with strands of strange light intertwined. Lin Tian was slightly moved. When he first entered the ancient relic, the young supreme masters of the Blood Wolf tribe and others fought over this jade. Now that he saw this jade again, he didn't hesitate. The yin and yang ho flashed and directly crossed over. After all, something that could make several young supreme masters fight over it at the same time couldn't be ordinary. Whoosh! The jade seemed to have sensed someone's arrival. As if it had its own consciousness, it quickly flew into the distance. Lin Tian's eyes flashed. The yin and yang ho flashed again, leaving behind afterimages with each step. In the blink of an eye, he appeared beside the jade and grabbed it in his hand. The jade buzzed and vibrated. It wanted to break free, but in the end, it was powerless. After a few breaths, it finally quieted down and stopped moving. Lin Tian looked at it from a close distance. The jade was only the size of a fist. Its surface was surrounded by strands of faint light. It was completely transparent. Holding it in his hand, it felt very warm. It's said that this is a divine material for forging divine weapons, he muttered to himself. Divine weapons were weapons above Taoist weapons. They were terrifyingly powerful, but it was quite troublesome to refine. It was even more difficult than producing a powerful warrior in the Enlightenment realm. This was because the materials needed to refine such weapons were very rare and difficult to find. Lin Tian held the jade and was slightly happy. He had just found the fourth fragment of the sword soul, and now he had obtained such a precious jade. This trip was really worthwhile. A divine material for forging divine weapons. Even a patriarch in the Enlightenment realm would be jealous. Moreover, he could feel that this thing was full of spirituality. It was amazing. If a mortal wore it, he could live for at least 10 more years. If some monks below the celestial reaching realm wore it, they could improve their cultivation speed and spiritual perception. He waved his right hand slightly and put the jade into the stone ring. Then he continued to walk across the blood river. It seemed that because some living creatures had entered this area, the waves on the blood river rose again and again. There was a kind of chilly wind whistling. In the blink of an eye, ghost babies rushed out from the bottom of the blood river. Their faces were strange and ferocious. They pounced on Lin Tian and bit him. Lin Tian's expression was calm. A lotus sea vaguely appeared behind him. The black and white lotus petals turned into dense lotus swords and rolled out. Pooh! 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 The ghost babies that rushed forward were all slashed into pieces, turning into a bloody mist. A foul stench floated in the air. For a moment, the other ghost infants that were charging in the distance all trembled. They felt fear and did not dare to charge forward. Lin Tian's steps were slow and steady. He quickly crossed the Blood River and reached the other side. He walked out of the ancient ruins. On the Blood River, the ghost babies stared at his back. In the end, they slowly sank to the bottom of the Blood River, not daring to go up and offend him again. Very quickly, Lin Tian stepped out of the ancient ruins and appeared outside the canyon. "Brother Lin!" A low voice rang out. From behind a large tree in the distance, a burly young man flashed over. It was Fan Xiong. Previously, when Lin Tian had asked him to leave the ancient ruins via voice transmission, he had immediately retreated and had been waiting for Lin Tian here. "I saw the 3 young supremes of the Blood Wolf clan rushing out with blood all over their bodies. Are you all right?" Fan Xiong looked at Lin Tian and was a little stunned. "You look like nothing happened to you." After the fierce battle, Lin Tian circulated the Sun Heart Sutra in the depths of the ancient ruins and healed most of his injuries. After that, he took out a set of clean clothes from the stone ring and changed into them. At this time, he looked fine and was in good spirits. "I'm fine." Lin Tian smiled and shook his head. "It's good that you're fine. It's good that you're fine. When I saw that you didn't come out, I was worried sick." Fan Xiong scratched his head and laughed foolishly when he heard Lin Tian's words. But soon, he clenched his fist and asked, "Where's the Ant Clan's guy?" Just now, he saw the 3 young supremes of the Blood Wolf clan, the Insect clan, and the Dark Shadow clan rushing out, but he did not see the Ant clan's young supremes. Now that Lin Tian stepped out, he did not see the Ant clan's young supremes either. He could not help but ask. The Ant clan was cruel. They had almost killed his uncles. Naturally, he hated the Ant clan. "Killed?" Lin Tian smiled. Fan Xiong was slightly stunned. "WH? What? Killed? Killed?" Lin Tian nodded. "Yes, I killed him." Fan Xiong stared at Lin Tian in a daze. Then, he became excited the next moment. "Good! Good job! Great!" He clenched his fist and wanted to punch the ground a few times. Then, he looked at Lin Tian and said excitedly, "Brother Lin, you're so awesome! You killed a young supreme being. Moreover, your body is so strong." This tall and sturdy young man was born in the land of berserkers, and he often went deep into the mountains to fight against all sorts of ferocious beasts. His body was incredibly strong, and he had absolute confidence in his own physical body. However, when he saw Lin Tian throw that punch just now, he found that the physical strength of Lin Tian's physical body was even slightly stronger than his own. Lin Tianji smiled and did not say anything. "Brother Lin, you should have taken the things inside, right?" "Then shall we go back now?" Fan Xiong asked. The burly young man clenched his fist. His eyes were full of excitement. He wanted to rush back and tell the people in the small tribe that Lin Tian Sha had killed the young supreme being of the Ant clan. He thought that the tribesmen would be very happy. Lin Tian paused and said, "I'm sorry, Xiong. I won't go back. I have some other things to do." He was going to go to the central area of the Heaven Realm to look for Bai Ziki and Bai Chiu. He was not worried about the safety of the siblings. It had been too long since they parted, and he wanted to see them again. "Are you looking for the 2 friends you mentioned before?" Fan Xiong asked. Lin Tian had asked about this in the small barbarian clan. Fan Xiong was beside him and naturally heard it. "Yes." Lin Tian nodded. Thus, Fan Xiong didn't speak any further on this point. Even though he really wanted Lin Tian to return with him, Lin Tian was going to look for a friend now, so he naturally couldn't delay Lin Tian's search for an important friend. He looked at Lin Tian and said, "No matter when, Brother Lin is welcome to come to our place. You can eat and drink as much as you want." "Okay." Lin Tian smiled. The young barbarian clan man's words were simple and not emotional at all. However, he felt a kind of sincerity. Finally, he bid farewell to Fan Xiong and stepped into the air. "Brother Lin, you are welcome to come back any time," Fan Xiong shouted at the top of his lungs. Lin Tian waved at Fan Xiong in the air and quickly disappeared into the horizon. After bidding farewell to Fanning Xiong, 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Lin Tian crossed over a dozen mountains and arrived in front of a huge stone city. He stepped into it calmly. The stone city was called Feng Luo City. It was not very famous in this heaven domain, but it was still a little famous. It was built with all kinds of huge brown strange stones. It was not luxurious and had a vicissitude aura. It had obviously existed for a long time. Many cultivators came and went every day. There were experts from all the big clans. Of course, on the whole, the rogue cultivators made up the most. There were 1 or 2 such cities in every territory, or even more. It was a place where many cultivators traded treasures and relaxed. After all, it was impossible for all the cultivators to stay in their own place to cultivate. That was not realistic. Lin Tian wanted to find Bai Ziki and Bai Chio. Coming to such a crowded place was naturally a good choice. He walked in Feng Luo City. There were many people on both sides of the street. The treasures and pavilions were all built with stones. Hey, did you hear? The young supreme being of the Ant clan was killed. Nonsense, of course I heard. How can I not know about this? I knew about it 2 days ago. I knew about it 3 days ago. I don't know where a young man came from, but he set up all kinds of traps and killed the young supreme being of the Ant clan. Yes, it's like that. I don't know who that young man is. He's too bold to do such a thing. I heard that it was to steal the middle-grade Dao weapon of the young supreme being of the Ant clan. For a middle-grade Dao weapon, he did this. That's ruthless. Many people were talking about it. Lin Tian walked in the city. When he heard this, he could not help but stop in his tracks. Had the news of the ancient ruins been spread? Moreover, it was spread like this. In order to steal the high-grade Dao weapon of the young supreme being of the Ant clan, he deliberately set up all kinds of traps and killed him? These people were not far from him. He could not help but tilt his head and ask, "Friend, where did this news come from? Is it true?" Of course it's true. This was personally spread by the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan. He even used his divine sense to depict that person's appearance. How can it be false? A young man in yellow said. Now, the Ant clan is almost crazy. Many experts have taken action and vowed to kill that person. Moreover, according to the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan, that person not only killed the young supreme being of the Ant clan, but also a few experts of the Bone clan. Now, there are experts of the Bone clan who have come out to kill that person. That person is really ruthless and bold. He even dares to provoke the experts of the Bone clan. The young man in yellow shook his head. It was unknown whether he was showing off that he knew a lot of things or not. But in the next moment, this yellow-clothed youth stared at Lin Tian and suddenly seemed a little moved. Speaking of which, brother, why do you look so similar to the person that the young supreme exalt of the Dark Shadow race depicted with his consciousness? It's as if you were made from the same mold. Some people looked over and stared at Lin Tian. They were also a little surprised. Eh? You don't say, they really look alike? That's right. They are too similar. This appearance, this figure, this temperament, they are exactly the same. These people were surprised. However, in merely 2 breaths of time, these people suddenly trembled in unison. Their expressions changed greatly, and as if they had seen a ghost, they all jumped away in unison. You. Chapter 697. Genius 1 second remember, providing you with wonderful novels to read. How could there be 2 people so similar in this world? Their appearance, body shape, and temperament were exactly the same. Even if they were biological brothers, it would be difficult to reach such a level, right? For a moment, several cultivators stared at Lin Tian, only to feel their scalps go numb. You can't be, are you that? These people were terrified. The crowd retreated. At this time, they stared at Lin Tian as if they were looking at a demon. Lin Tian didn't care about these people's reaction, but his eyes were intertwined with a cold light. The young supremacy of the Dark Shadow clan was really good at spreading rumors about him. forget about the young supremacy of the Ant clan. He was the one who killed the other party. This was not a big deal because no matter what, the Ant clan would want to kill him. However, this young supremacy of the Dark Shadow clan actually said that several experts of the Bone clan were also killed by him. This was a little despicable. One should know that those 5 people were clearly killed by the young supremacy of the Dark Shadow clan. Now, they were pouring dirty water on him. This was clearly to draw hatred to him and put the Bone clan on the opposite side of his enemy. Good scheming, he mocked in his heart. It's really that. The young man in yellow who spoke first trembled. On the streets of this city, many cultivators looked over, and their eyes fell on Lin Tian. It's that person. After plotting to kill the young supremacy of the Ant clan and several experts of the Bone clan, he actually dares to appear here like this. Many people's expressions changed. Almost in the blink of an eye, the voices came out one after another, causing the city to be filled with exclamations. Lin Tian knew that it was probably impossible to inquire about something in this city, so he could only walk out of the city. It didn't take long for him to arrive at the city gate. Don't even think about escaping! At this time, a roar filled with anger and killing intent rang out. The Ant race and the Bone race happened to have some experts living in the city. After hearing the roar, they rushed over and surrounded Lin Tian at the city gate. Among them, there were 13 warriors from the Ant clan. The one with the highest cultivation was at the 4th heaven of the connecting immortal realm. There were 6 warriors from the Bone clan. The one with the highest cultivation was at the 6th heaven of the connecting immortal realm. Moreover, there was a group of other cultivators following behind them. They were densely packed, and it was obvious that they were all here to watch the show. Lin Tian stopped in his tracks. His expression was very calm. He naturally knew why these cultivators from the 2 clans had come. His gaze descended onto the 13 members of the Ant clan, and he glanced casually at them before he said, I even slaughtered those ants of yours that were said to be able to kill half-step Grand Dao realm experts. Now a few trash ants like you dare to come looking for trouble with me? Do you want to die so badly? This ant? A useless ant? Many cultivators trembled. The ant race was very powerful. Their original form was a type of demonic ant from the ancient times, and their bloodline was very powerful. But now, such a powerful race's young supreme being was directly called an ant, and these ant race cultivators in front of them were called useless ants. These people only felt that the person in front of them was simply too arrogant and bold. He was simply treating the ant race as if they were nothing. However, these people quickly understood. If he was not arrogant and bold, how would he dare to kill the young supreme being of this bloodline? Bastard! You just relied on a despicable trap to kill our clan's genius. Who do you think you are? If you rely on your own strength, you are nothing. You damn thing! Damn you! The leader of the ant race roared, his eyes bloodshot. Take him down! Kill him! Kill him! The rare genius of the ant race in thousands of years had been killed by someone. To the ant race, this was a great loss. Everyone in the ant race wanted nothing more than to swallow Lin Tian alive. Boom! 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 3 waves of demonic aura surged. Immediately, 3 ant race cultivators rushed toward Lin Tian. They were all at the 1st heaven of the immortal ascension realm. Lin Tian's expression was indifferent. Naturally, he would not show any mercy to these ant race cultivators. Looking at the 3 of them rushing toward him, he directly slapped out. With a poof, the person at the front was slapped into pieces on the spot. Then, he grabbed the ant race cultivator at the back by his right wrist and smashed him like a weapon toward another ant race cultivator. They all exploded. This so powerful? 3 immortal ascension realm cultivators were actually. Many people's hearts trembled. These people widened their eyes, and they all felt a chill down their spines. Previously, when they heard the description of the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow race, everyone thought that Lin Tian relied on a trap to kill the young supreme being of the ant race by luck. Perhaps his strength was considered powerful, but not by much. Otherwise, he would not have needed to set up a trap. But at this moment, seeing the scene in front of them, these people's thoughts were suddenly shaken. Although they were only at the first heaven of the Immortal Ascension Realm, it was terrifying enough to kill 3 Immortal Ascension Realm cultivators with a raise of his hand. It was definitely not something an ordinary Immortal Ascension Realm cultivator could do. Lin Tian's expression was indifferent. He tilted his head to look at the Bone Race cultivators and said, "Those people of your Bone Race who died were not killed by me. On the contrary, they were killed by the Dark Shadow Race, the Insect Race, the Blood Wolf Race, and the Ant Race's young Supreme Being. It has nothing to do with me." At this moment, the reason why he was explaining to these Bone Race cultivators was not that he was afraid of trouble, but that he did not want to attract unnecessary trouble to himself. The 6 Bone Race cultivators who lived here were all experts. Their cultivations ranged from the 4th heaven of the Immortal Ascension Realm to the 6th heaven of the Immortal Ascension Realm. They stared at Lin Tian with cold eyes. One of them said coldly, "Would you obediently admit that you killed them?" Lin Tian was a little uncomfortable with this person's tone, but he still said, "If I killed them, I would not dare to deny it. If I didn't kill them, I have no need to admit it. Those experts of your clan were indeed not killed by me. As I said, it was the Dark Shadow Race's young Supreme Being who colluded with the Supreme Beings of the other 3 races to kill your people." Hearing his words for the second time, the expressions of many cultivators in this place turned strange. The deaths of the Bone Race cultivators really weren't caused by his scheme? Could the Dark Shadow Race's young Supreme Being be lying? It really was the Dark Shadow Race's young Supreme Being who colluded with the Supreme Beings of the other 3 races to. That's a young Supreme Being. He wouldn't do such a despicable thing, right? Yeah, he's a young Supreme Being after all. Many people frowned. After all, the Dark Shadow Race's young Supreme Being was a famous young expert in this heaven domain. Being able to reach such heights, he shouldn't be so petty, right? Looking at Lin Tian, at this moment, Lin Tian's expression didn't seem to show any signs of lying. For a moment, these people really couldn't figure out who was telling the truth. The experts of the Bone Race looked at the dozen or so cultivators of the Ant Race, their eyes slightly cold. Obviously, they were a little shaken after hearing Lin Tian's words. This undoubtedly caused the dozen or so cultivators of the Ant Race here to tremble, and a chill ran down their spines for no reason. The leader of the Ant Race hurriedly said, "Experts of the Bone Race, please don't listen to this bastard's slanderous words. This bastard killed a genius of our race and several of your race's clansmen. He already knows that our race and your race won't let him go, so he deliberately made up such a story. He wants to make your race suspicious, and let your race and our race fight to the death, while he stays out of it. This is his scheme." Who in this heaven domain didn't know the tyranny of the Bone Race? If the Bone Race listened to Lin Tian and targeted the Ant Race, it would definitely be a great disaster for the Ant Race. At this time, the Ant Race cultivator faced the experts of the Bone Race and lowered his posture. At the same time, he stared at Lin Tian in shock and anger, and the killing intent in his eyes became more intense. Hearing the words of the Ant Race cultivator, the 6 people of the Bone Race frowned and turned their heads, their cold eyes landing on Lin Tian again. It was still the same person who spoke first. His cultivation was at the 6th level of the connecting immortal realm, and he said coldly, "Is that what you think?" Lin Tian frowned slightly. This person's tone made him feel even more uncomfortable. Moreover, he was looking down on him with the attitude of an emperor. His voice became slightly indifferent. "I said I didn't kill them. It has nothing to do with me. You say it has nothing to do with you, and we have to believe you?" The 6 people looked cold. "Then, what do you want to believe me?" Lin Tian Andao. Among the 6 people, the strongest cultivator at the 6th level of the connecting immortal realm stepped forward and said coldly, "Stand there and don't move. Let me search your spiritual sea. We'll know whether it's true or not. If our clansmen really didn't die because of you, our race won't do anything to you. This search my spiritual sea? Seems a little." At this place, many people were slightly shocked. Usually, cultivators had their own secrets. If someone searched their spiritual sea, the secret would be exposed. Moreover, the spiritual sea was an incomparably important existence to a cultivator. It was definitely a very bad thing to let someone search their spiritual sea. Lin Tian's face instantly sank. He just didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble, which was why he had repeatedly explained to these people. However, these people had maintained an overbearing attitude from the beginning. Now, they were even reaching for a yard after taking an inch and actually wanted to search his sea of consciousness. "If you want to die, just say it," he said coldly. At this time, facing the 6 people of the Bone Clan, he no longer had any trace of politeness. A wave of coldness intertwined. "Friends of the Bone Clan, look, how arrogant is this beast! Apart from being killed by him, how could there be any other possibility?" the leader of the Ant Clan said. At the same time, the faces of the 6 people of the Bone Clan naturally became gloomy. Bone-chilling murderous intent spread out without any concealment. "It seems that the rumors are true. The few people of my clan were really killed by you," the leader of the Bone Clan said coldly. "No need to say more. Kill him." An expert of the Bone Clan stepped forward and slapped Lin Tian. Chapter 698. The Bone Clan expert's speed was also very fast. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of Lin Tian. Read the full text. So fast. "Little bastard! How dare you touch a member of my clan?" The man's eyes were cold. With a buzzing sound, the strength in his right hand increased. His momentum was extremely strong. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He raised his right hand and grabbed the man's wrist. The man was shocked. "You!" Lin Tian grabbed the man's wrist and twisted it slightly. The sound of bones breaking was heard, and the man screamed on the spot. Moreover, at the same time, a ghastly longsword floated out and was held in midair by him using the weapon control technique. It flickered with a ghastly cold light, and was aimed straight at the center of this person's brows. It was less than an inch away from the center of this person's brows, causing this person to stop screaming on the spot. His eyes immediately revealed a terrified expression, and cold sweat even flowed down his forehead and cheeks. That's a 4th heaven of the reaching immortal realm. In an instant he was so scary. The crowd trembled. The other 5 Bone Clan experts also changed their expressions. For a moment they didn't move. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He wanted to directly pierce the man's forehead with the weapon control technique, but in the end, he didn't do it. He looked at the other 5 Bone Clan experts and said coldly, "I'll say it one last time. The death of your clansmen has nothing to do with me. I have no obligation to cooperate with you." He swung his right hand and directly shook the Bone Clan expert. "This time, I'll let you go. Don't provoke me again." At this time, he could directly prove his words by using the spirit engraving. However, he would never do that, because at that time, his vision was focused on the sword's soul fragment. Once he used the spirit engraving, the sword's soul fragment would appear in front of everyone. This was not something he wanted to see. After all, the sword's soul fragment was related to the divine sword in his sea of consciousness. Like the reincarnation body, it was his biggest secret. The fewer people who knew about that, the better. Even though there were dozens of people who had seen the sword's soul fragment in the ancient ruins at that time, those people only treated it as an extraordinary treasure. This more or less made him feel more at ease. And now, if he were to use the spirit carving in Feng Luo City, it might be exposed to the whole world. If some old antiques who were cultivating in seclusion were to notice that it was a soldier spirit, then he would really be in trouble. To him, that was a true disaster. After all, only the legendary Chaos Origin Sky treasure has a weapon soul. It's enough to make anyone under the Chaos realm go crazy. When he was in the sword tomb of the second heaven, the Nirvana stage Nether Demon Dragon tried to snatch the sword's soul fragment in the depths of the sword tomb, but in the end, it was defeated by the divine sword in his knowledge sea. At this time, after he used the spirit seal, once someone realized that the seven-colored light source was a soldier's soul, he would really die. Rees. Therefore, he had to be extremely cautious. It was impossible for him to use the spirit carving at that time. It was also because of this that he only verbally explained to the people of the Bone Clan 3 times. In fact, he felt that he had done enough explaining these 3 times because, as he said just now, he did not kill the members of the Bone Clan. In this world of cultivation, he had no obligation to cooperate with the Bone Clan. He stared at the 6 people of the Bone Clan and said coldly, "Just now, you wanted to search my knowledge sea and attack me. I will pretend that didn't happen. But I warn you, don't do it a second time. Otherwise, I will not show mercy." In this place, many people's hearts trembled. They only felt that Lin Tian was too strong. Facing the powerhouses of the Bone Clan, he actually had such an attitude. He did not care at all and coldly shouted at them. It was simply too strong. "Friends of the Bone Clan, look! Who does he think he is? How dare he do this?" The leader of the Ant Clan stared at Lin Tian. There was fear in his eyes, but more than that, there was killing intent. "You schemed to kill the geniuses of our clan and killed several powerhouses of the Bone Clan. Now you are still so arrogant. This is simply intolerable. If we don't kill you, how can we bring peace to this land? Kill him!" The man roared. Immediately, except for the leader of the Ant Clan, the surrounding cultivators of the Ant Clan all rushed out and attacked Lin Tian. There was fear in these people's eyes, but Lin Tian was the person who killed the young sovereign of the Ant Clan. At this time, when the leader of the Ant Clan gave the order, how could these people not attack? Although they were afraid, they had to charge forward. "Let's join forces and sacrifice to the divine ant-killing formation," one of the Ant Clan cultivators shouted. For a moment, the 9 Ant Clan cultivators who rushed out all moved separately. In the blink of an eye, their figures became somewhat illusory, giving people a huge difference in perspective. They attacked Lin Tian from all directions. Moreover, when the 9 Ant Clan cultivators worked together, their offensive power increased by a lot. That kind of aura made many cultivators in this place tremble in fear. It is said that the Ant Clan's heavenly ant god-slaying formation can be used by up to 10,000 people at the same time. It can destroy almost all living things, a cultivator said. Boom! This place was filled with astonishing demonic chi. When the 9 Ant Clan cultivators worked together to attack Lin Tian, their movements were somewhat confusing, making it difficult for people to catch sight of them. Lin Tian was surrounded by the 9 Ant Clan cultivators. His expression was indifferent. The long sword that he had used previously fell into his hand. With a swing of the sword, he directly shattered the combined killing light of the 9 Ant Clan cultivators using the heavenly ant god-slaying formation. It turned into specks of demonic chi that floated in the air. The leader of the Ant Clan was shocked. Facing the heavenly ant god-slaying formation, which was used by 9 Ant Clan cultivators, Lin Tian seemed to be under no pressure at all. Gritting his teeth, he turned to the 6 bone race masters and said, "Friends from the bone race, this beast is indeed quite strong. My clan has trapped it with the heavenly ant-killing god array, so I ask friends from the bone race to join forces and kill this beast together to avenge our clansmen." Saying so, he added, "This beast is too arrogant." The last sentence was obviously deliberately said for the 6 Bone Clan cultivators to hear, especially for the Bone Clan cultivator who was injured by Lin Tian just now. He wanted the 6 Bone Clan cultivators to attack again and kill Lin Tian together. The 6 Bone Clan cultivators were not stupid. Naturally, they knew what the leader of the Ant Clan cultivators was thinking. Even so, the 6 of them stared at Lin Tian with cold eyes, even colder than before. Especially the expert from the Bone Clan who'd been injured by Lin Tian just now, his gaze was the most ghastly. Lin Tian had injured him in front of everyone just now, and it could be said that he'd lost all face. At this time, the Bone Clan cultivator's eyes were filled with malice. He gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Kill him and avenge our clansmen." With a boom, the Bone Clan cultivator moved as soon as he finished speaking. He activated his divine ability, and rushed towards Lin Tian. The leader of the Bone Clan cultivators stared coldly at Lin Tian, who was surrounded by the 9 Ant Clan cultivators. After a pause, he spat out a word filled with murderous intent. Kill! Boom! 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 As soon as he finished speaking, the Bone Clan cultivators moved together and pressed towards Lin Tian. Kill! The leader of the Ant Clan shouted and followed closely behind. Together with the 6 Bone Clan cultivators, they charged towards Lin Tian mercilessly. Suddenly, the area turned into a sea of killing lights, forcing many onlookers to retreat hurriedly. Crack! Waves of crisp sounds came from the void, as if it was about to collapse in the next moment. Lin Tian took a step forward, dodging the dense killing lights as he glanced coldly at the 6 Bone Clan cultivators. You're courting death, he said coldly. The 6 Bone Clan cultivators' eyes were cold. They did not say a word. They just stared at Lin Tian mercilessly and sent out killing lights one after another. The leader of the Ant Clan snorted coldly. His eyes were cruel as he said, You're trapped by our heavenly ant-killing god formation. Facing the joint attack of 6 Bone Clan cultivators and 10 Bone Clan cultivators, you still dare to be so arrogant. Little bastard, do you really think you're something? Today, you can only die here at the hands of my clan and the Bone Clan cultivators. We'll chop you up and feed you to the dogs. Lin Tian tilted his head and looked at the Ant Clan cultivator. His eyes were as cold as snow. This gaze undoubtedly made the person from the Ant Clan extremely unhappy. His expression became even colder. Activate my clan's god-killing ant formation even more. His voice was gloomy and cold. However, in the next moment, he was forcefully interrupted because Lin Tian's figure had suddenly appeared before him as if he had crossed through space. This caused his expression to change drastically. You! Lin Tian did not say anything. The long sword in his hand glowed with cold light as he mercilessly chopped down on the Ant Clan cultivator's head. The Ant Clan cultivator was terrified. At this moment, he felt as if the space around him had been completely sealed. He could not move or dodge. Stop! Poof! The void split open, and blood splattered. The Ant Clan cultivator's head was directly chopped off, and his body exploded with a poof. Suddenly, everyone's hearts trembled. One sword killed! The crowd trembled. It was only one sword, but he had killed a 4th heaven of the spirit connecting realm cultivator. Moreover, he was killed while being surrounded by so many strong cultivators. How terrifying was this strength! The 9 members of the ant race who had formed the heavenly ant-killing god array trembled. Their leader was actually killed so easily. In an instant, the 9 cultivators' expressions changed drastically, and they could not help but tremble. Lin Tian tilted his head and looked at the 9 cultivators of the Ant Clan coldly. He was a 6th-stage array master, and he had mastered the Heavenly One Soul Art, the supreme ancient scripture of the array Tao. These people had used a simple joint attack formation to kill him. Standing in the middle of the joint attack formation, he could see the core flaw of the formation in the blink of an eye. The long sword in his hand trembled, and he directly deflected dozens of sword rays. He slashed horizontally from different angles, and while breaking the joint attack formation, the sword pierced through the foreheads of the 9 cultivators. This, the heavenly ant-killing god formation of the Ant Clan, formed by 9 strong cultivators, was broken. And it was also one sword, he. As they stared at Lin Tian, the hearts of all the cultivators trembled. At this time, the 6 cultivators of the Bone Clan also paled. They truly felt the terror of Lin Tian. One of them could not help but take a step back. Chapter 699. The sword in Lin Tian's hand was very ordinary, but at this time, it was intertwined with a chilling aura that made the 6 Bone Clan cultivators tremble. Seeing Lin Tian walk over, the 6 Bone Clan cultivators felt their hearts tremble for no reason. But soon, their eyes became cold again. They gritted their teeth, and a murderous light appeared in their eyes. Don't be afraid of him. There are 6 of us. Let's use our Bone Clan's special technique together. The leader of the Bone Clan cultivators said in a deep voice. Let's kill him together! The Bone Clan cultivator who had been injured by Lin Tian nodded. Although there was fear in his eyes, there was no doubt that there was more sinister light. The 6 of them roared, and their bodies flashed with divine light. A majestic force combined and swept in all directions. All around, the surrounding cultivators were shocked by this aura and all of them retreated. In the blink of an eye, the place became empty. Only Lin Tianyi walked step by step toward the 6 Bone Clan cultivators. His steps were gentle, and the black hair on his forehead danced in the wind. Kill! At this time, 6 paths coldly shouted. The 6 Bone Clan cultivators attacked together. Pieces of spine rushed out of their bodies. All of them were blue and glowing with divine light. Whoosh! 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 The dense spine flew across the sky and surrounded Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. It spun violently and kicked up a cloud of dust. Then, in the next moment, these spines quickly formed a bone prison, trapping Lin Tian inside. When the Bone Clan cultivators reach the immortal connecting realm, their bones will turn blue. In terms of hardness, they are comparable to high-grade immortal artifacts. And this seems to be the Bone Clan's 6-star bone lock technique. I was lucky enough to see it a few years ago. It's terrifying. After being trapped inside, ordinary people can't get out at all. They can only become living targets for wanton attacks. Some of the older cultivators were frightened. Around them, a group of cultivators stared at the 6 Bone Clan cultivators. They were secretly shocked by the strength of this clan. They could turn their bones into weapons at will. They could use them to attack and seal enemies. They were really strong. After that, those people glanced at Lin Tian, who was in the bone prison. Lin Tian was extremely powerful just a moment ago, but now, he was actually trapped so easily. When the 6 bone race cultivators saw that Lin Tian had been enveloped by their techniques, the fear in their eyes finally dissipated completely, replaced by a chilling coldness. Our clan's 6-star bone lock grand art has every spine intertwined with the essence aura of our clan. With the 6 of us joining forces to form this cage, even an ordinary half-step great Tao expert might not be able to shatter it, the leader of the Bone Clan cultivators said. The Bone Clan cultivator who was injured by Lin Tian stepped forward. A bone appeared in his left hand. Holding it with his right hand, he slowly pulled it out and turned it into a bone sword. He rushed towards Lin Tian. Now you are the beast in the cage. Try again with the arrogance you showed just now, the Bone Clan cultivator said coldly. Whether you killed my clansmen or not, you must die now. You have offended us. The Bone Clan cultivator approached the cage. The bone sword in his hand glowed with blue light as he stabbed straight at Lin Tian. Whether I killed your clansmen or not, I must die. In the bone prison, Lin Tian's expression remained unchanged. He raised the long sword in his hand slightly. Do you think this 4th heaven is your Bone Clan's territory? Clang! The sword whistled as he casually slashed down, creating a clear space crack. In the next moment, with a loud bang, the blue bone prison that sealed his body collapsed. Broken bones splashed everywhere. With just one slash, he broke the 6-star bone lock technique of the Bone Clan's 6 great powerhouses. The elder who spoke before was shocked. His eyes were full of horror and disbelief. The faces of the Bone Clan cultivators also changed. How was this possible? The technique that the 6 of them used together couldn't even withstand a single blow? The Bone Clan cultivator who was injured by Lin Tian was even more horrified. He staggered back. No way! How could you destroy it? Lin Tian's face was expressionless. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of the Bone Clan cultivator. He didn't say anything. The long sword in his hand glowed with a cold light as he indifferently slashed down. Stop, Puff! Blood splashed everywhere. The Bone Clan cultivator was directly chopped into pieces. Pieces of flesh and bones splattered all over the ground. Another slash? He killed the 4th heaven of the connecting immortal realm with one sword strike. How strong is he? The crowd's hearts trembled. Lin Tian didn't care about the crowd's reaction. Instead, he casually glanced at the Bone Clan cultivator he killed. He found that the Bone Clan cultivator's bones were completely blue and glowed faintly with blue light. He didn't care too much about this. His gaze paused for a moment, then moved away and looked at the other 5 Bone Clan cultivators. When they met Lin Tian's gaze, the 5 of them immediately felt their hearts palpitate. Their expressions became much uglier. Clang! The sword whistled again. Lin Tian took simple steps, leaving after images with each step. He appeared in front of one of the Bone Clan cultivators. The sword directly penetrated the Bone Clan cultivator's forehead, destroying his knowledge sea with one slash. Blood splattered, and the Bone Clan cultivator next to him was shocked and angry. Beast! The Bone Clan cultivator roared. Dense bone spikes grew in his right hand, intertwining with killing light, and blasted toward Lin Tian. Lin Tian's feet flashed, and he punched down. With a thud, the void shook, as if a divine drum had been beaten. The Bone Clan cultivator who attacked had a good cultivation, but he couldn't withstand this punch and was directly blasted into pieces. That Bone Clan cultivator was at the 5th heaven of the Ascension realm! Someone couldn't help but exclaim. A Bone Clan cultivator at the 5th heaven of the Ascension realm was smashed into pieces with a simple punch. Lin Tian's expression didn't change. He casually tilted his head, and his gaze fell on the last 3 Bone Clan cultivators. He stepped forward calmly, and closed in on the nearest person. You, damn it! Bone-breaking kill! The Bone Clan cultivator roared. Immediately, the densely packed blue bones of death shot out. Every single one of them contained a shocking killing power, and they shot towards Lin Tian like thousands of arrows. Lin Tian's expression didn't change at all. As if he was walking on a flat road, he took 2 steps and appeared in front of the Bone Clan cultivator. His right hand pointed at the Bone Clan cultivator's forehead, and the sword light flashed. With a poof, it pierced through the Bone Clan cultivator's forehead, causing him to fall backward. Human! The leader of the Bone Clan cultivators roared. There was anger, fear, and killing intent in his eyes. In the blink of an eye, 4 of the 6 people who came here were killed. Die! The Bone Clan cultivator roared. His whole body flashed with blue light, and he summoned a huge skeleton. The skeleton was intertwined with blue divine light, and even had electric arcs. It wildly waved its huge bone fist at Lin Tian, causing the space to cave in inch by inch. Lin Tian tilted his head and only said 3 words. You brought this upon yourself. He raised his hand and met it with a punch. Crack! With a crisp sound, the huge skeleton broke into pieces. He stepped forward again and instantly came in front of the Bone Clan cultivator. The 9-spring sword formed by the divining divine skill was held in his hand and mercilessly slashed down. Poof! The Bone Clan cultivator's head flew diagonally and rolled far away. Then, he slashed down with his sword, shattering the headless corpse into pieces as well. In the blink of an eye, there was only 1 Bone Clan cultivator left. His face was full of fear, and he could not stop trembling. The Bone Clan cultivator roared and urged all the divine power in his body to attack Lin Tian with the tyrannical divine power. After that, the man turned around and rushed into the void, crossing hundreds of feet in an instant, and rushing madly into the distance. He escaped? The crowd stared. The Bone Clan cultivator, now, had escaped. Lin Tian looked up without any emotion. He stepped forward, leaving afterimages behind. In the blink of an eye, he stopped the Bone Clan cultivator. Human, do you want to be enemies with the Bone Clan? The Bone Clan cultivator shouted fiercely. Lin Tian's expression was indifferent. He did not want to talk nonsense, and directly slashed down with the 9-spring sword in his hand. Since he had already attacked and killed 5 people, how could he show mercy at this time? Poof! A cloud of blood mist exploded, and the Bone Clan cultivator died on the spot. Only pieces of flesh and bones fell from the sky to the ground. In the blink of an eye, the 6 Bone Clan cultivators were all killed, just like the 13 Ant Clan cultivators who chased after him. Lin Tian stood in midair and glanced down at Feng Luo City. The 9-spring sword in his hand disappeared, and he turned around and strode into the distance. Soon, he was far away from the boundary of Feng Luo City and disappeared from the sight of the crowd. This young man, he killed 13 Ant Clan cultivators, 6 Bone Clan cultivators, and the leader of the Bone Clan cultivators. The whole process was just like cutting vegetables. Is such a person really a young Ant Clan cultivator who relied on traps to kill? This kind of strength is enough to be called supreme among those of the same generation. Many people were shocked. At the same time, some people also thought of other things. It doesn't matter whether he was the one who killed the Bone Race's people before, because now, he has truly killed 6 of the Bone Race's powerhouses. I'm afraid the Bone Clan won't let this go. There's also the Ant Clan. With their young Ant Clan cultivator killed, this clan will not let that person go. After this, won't that person have to face the entire Ant Clan and the entire Bone Clan at the same time? That should be the case. Looking at his techniques, they don't belong to any of the major clans in this region. He should be a rogue cultivator. As a rogue cultivator, he has to face 2 major clans at the same time. Many cultivators were shocked. After leaving Feng Luo City, Lin Tian walked to other places where cultivators were densely gathered, searching for Bai Ziki and Bai Chiu. Not long after, more than 20 Ant Clan cultivators intercepted him at a fork in the road. There were half-step Great Dao cultivators among them. ****. The half-step Great Dao cultivator of the Ant Clan's eyes were red, and his killing intent was monstrous. He directly waved his demon light at Lin Tian. In response, Lin Tianji snorted coldly and stepped forward. Boom! 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 This was an astonishing battle. Tyrannical fluctuations intertwined, causing many nearby cultivators to palpitate. In the intense battle, Lin Tian used all his means. The 4-symbol seal annihilated everything, the divination divine technique evolved, and the offensive power of the weapon control technique was astonishing. The half-step Great Dao cultivator of the Mad War Ant Clan destroyed the land near the fork in the road. In the end, after the battle lasted for more than 4 hours, Lin Tian's clothes were stained with blood. He used the reincarnation diagram to destroy his opponent's body and soul. Now, his cultivation had reached the peak of the 2nd firmament of ascension, and his combat strength was much stronger. He was no longer comparable to when he had just entered the ascension realm. Few below the Great Dao realm could do anything to him. Elder! The cultivators of the Ant Clan who came along were horrified. A half-step Great Dao cultivator was killed just like that. Lin Tian tilted his head and stared at the group of Ant Clan cultivators. Without any hesitation, he attacked indifferently, and the sword light swept across. In about 10 breaths' time, he killed all the Ant Clan cultivators who came along and turned to leave. He looks like he's only 20 years old, but he can kill a half-step Great Dao cultivator. There were many cultivators near the fork. At this moment, they stared at Lin Tian's back as he left, and their hearts trembled. Time flew, and 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. 5 days later, Lin Tian was surrounded by a group of Bone Clan cultivators. Among them, there were 2 half-step Great Dao cultivators. They attacked him forcefully and mercilessly, wanting to take his life and sacrifice his soul to their dead clansmen. In response, Lin Tian was even more forceful and merciless. After the battle, he killed all the Bone Clan cultivators who surrounded him, leaving only the heads of the 2 half-step Great Dao cultivators behind. He nailed their heads to the ground with a sword. For a time, this area was in an uproar. A youth had appeared out of nowhere. He was iron-blooded and domineering. He killed a group of Ant Clan and Bone Clan cultivators consecutively, including several half-step Great Dao cultivators. They were all killed in body and soul, shocking many cultivators. Suddenly, a resplendent new star rose rapidly and spread his might throughout the world. Another young supreme being! Some people's hearts palpitated. Time passed quickly. In a flash, half a month had passed. On this day, The scorching sun still hung high in the sky, sprinkling the sky with fiery rays. Lin Tian's expression was calm as he strode through the old mountains and secluded forests. He passed by many places crowded with cultivators. On this day, he walked into a city that was even more famous than Fengluo City. Under the shocked gazes of many cultivators in the city, he destroyed a luxurious restaurant in the city and forced out a black-robed youth. It was the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan. 6 hours ago, he learned by chance that the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan had entered this city, so he came directly to kill him. The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan stared at Lin Tian. His eyes flickered with a dim light, and there were arcs of electricity intertwining on the surface of his body. "Human, how dare you!" The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan was followed by 2 other powerful cultivators of the same clan. Their cultivation bases were not weak, at the 5th tier of the immortal connecting realm. When they sensed Lin Tian's hostility towards the young supreme being of their clan, they immediately scolded him. Lin Tian raised his hand and swung his sword. 2 streaks of blood-red light were slashed, and the 2 powerful cultivators of the Dark Shadow clan were smashed into pieces. "Today, I'll borrow your head." He looked at the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan. Chapter 700. Standing in the air, Lin Tian looked at the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan with a calm expression. His clothes fluttered in the wind. Is he the man in the recent rumors? The experts of the Killer Ant clan and the Bone clan have been forced here. Is he going to attack the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan? Many people in the city were shocked. This ancient city was called Ancient Sand City. It had existed for a long time. Countless cultivators came and went every day. The young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan stared at Lin Tian now with dark light flashing in his eyes. "Do you think you can defeat me in a head-on battle without any tricks?" Not long ago in the Battle of the Ancient Ruins, Lin Tian secretly drew a killing array before the battle. But now it was different. Without the killing array, he didn't take Lin Tian seriously at all. Lin Tian didn't say anything. He moved directly. Leaving afterimages behind, he came to the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan in a flash. He raised his hand and punched. His speed was so fast that even the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan couldn't counterattack. He could only cross his arms in front of his chest. Bang! With a muffled sound, the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan was directly sent flying and crashed into a palace in Ancient Sand City. The young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan was sent flying with one punch? The crowd was shocked. Although they had heard a lot of rumors about Lin Tian and knew that Lin Tian was very powerful, they didn't expect him to be so powerful that he could send a young supreme master flying with just one blow. This made many people's hearts skip a beat. Boom! With a loud bang, the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan rushed up. There was some dust on his body, but he wasn't seriously injured. However, his eyes seemed to be even colder, like 2 peerless sharp blades in the darkness, making people's hearts tremble. Lin Tian stepped forward directly. The 9-spring sacred sword, which was formed by the divining divine skill, pressed toward the young supreme master with a sky full of sword light. With a clang, the sword whistled, making many people feel a sharp pain in their eardrums. Some people directly reached out to cover their ears. The young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan waved his hand. A large amount of black light condensed into a halberd, facing Lin Tian's 9-spring sword head-on. Boom! The sword and halberd collided, instantly setting off a violent hurricane. Lin Tian's eyes were indifferent. He shook his right hand, and the 9-spring sacred sword shone even brighter. An oppressive sword chi vibrated, and this space was immediately shrouded by this sword chi. The sword chi came from all directions and attacked the young supremacy of the Dark Shadow clan. The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan snorted coldly. He pulled back his halberd and swept it horizontally, crushing all of the sword chi. "You're no match for me in a direct battle," he said coldly. As his words fell, The halberd in his hand became even more powerful, and the speed of his attacks became even faster. Lin Tian's expression didn't change. He was still indifferent. Holding his sword, he slashed out dozens of sword lights. For a moment, the two of them moved like two streaks of light. It was hard to see their real bodies clearly. Only the sound of sword and halberd colliding could be heard continuously. Only waves of shocking energy waves could be seen spreading out in all directions. So fast! I can't see how they move at all. Some people were shocked. Dong! 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 The two of them collided, and a series of booming sounds could be heard, causing the void to tremble. Lin Tian held the nine-spring sword in his right hand, and a sea of three-leaf clovers suddenly appeared behind him. The black and white three-leaf clovers fluttered, completely covering the space in all directions. They didn't give the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan any chance to dodge, and directly pressed toward the center. Humph! The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan's eyes were cold. He raised his hand and summoned a large number of shadow-killing halberd lights, which directly cut all of the black and white three-leaf clovers into pieces. The two of them collided. For a moment, divine lights and killing lights intertwined, and balls of dazzling halos exploded. At the same time, Ancient Sand City was in trouble. Although the two of them were fighting in the air, they were still in the air above Ancient Sand City. From time to time, remnant sword chi would fall, causing many of the palaces and pavilions in the city to be destroyed. Some of the cultivators even quickly dodged, afraid that they would be hit by the remnant sword chi when the two of them were fighting. If they are allowed to continue fighting like this, who knows how many cities will be destroyed? Some people's hearts palpitated. Lin Tian glanced down at Ancient Sand City. His expression was still indifferent. He looked at the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan and said, "Let's fight outside the city." The moment his words fell, a huge divine shadow suddenly appeared behind him. The great immortal king of the Bai clan's arcane art was activated to the extreme. The entire divine shadow seemed to have solidified at this moment, and it slammed forward with a palm. Bang! With a loud boom, the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan was directly sent flying by this palm. He crashed into the old forest outside the city like a meteor. Lin Tian stepped on the yin and yang ho, leaving afterimages with each step. In the blink of an eye, he stepped out of Ancient Sand City. He slashed out a dazzling sword light from a distance, slashing toward the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan in the mountains. This young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan spread rumors about him, and made enemies for him. Although he was not afraid, he was naturally not happy. Therefore, he came here to kill the other party. However, he also knew that if he really fought with the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan in Ancient Sand City, the city would probably be destroyed beyond recognition in the end. Even some unrelated people would die tragically. This was not something he wanted to see. Therefore, he took the initiative to change the battlefield. He used the Bai clan's arcane art to push the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan out of the range of Ancient Sand City. Clang! The sword light swept across the sky, cutting a large piece of forest into pieces. It slashed straight toward the place where the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan fell. It was also at this moment that a rumble resounded from there as a black figure stood up. It was an entire 30 m tall, and it had the appearance of a general. It was completely condensed from dark jet black light, and it crushed the oppressive sword light that Lin Tian slashed over. Shadow King! The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan's voice came from the 30 meters tall giant shadow. Then, the giant shadow moved again. It pulled out a shadow sword from its waist and slashed toward Lin Tian. With a loud boom, a shocking force swept out. The void shattered with a crack, and the earth shook. Lin Tian naturally felt the terror of this attack, but he did not care. The great immortal king of the Bai family used the arcane art again. An equally huge divine shadow appeared and pressed down with its palm. Boom! The palm force collided with the shadow sword. In the end, the two giant shadows collapsed together. The violent airflow quickly swept out in all directions. Lin Tian and the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan clashed again. Sword light, halberd light, fist shadows, and leg shadows. The two of them continued to exchange blows, creating a sky full of energy vortexes. This caused the old forest to shake continuously. Many bird demons flew away in fear. Lin Tian stepped on the yin-yang puppet and moved extremely fast. He used his sword light to shatter the killing light of the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan. The 9-spring sacred sword pierced into the young supreme martial artist's chest, bringing out a large amount of blood. Shadow sword! The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan roared. His hands turned into shadows and left a transparent bloody hole in Lin Tian's abdomen. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He did not care about the wound in his abdomen. He swung his left fist and punched at the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan. Almost at the same time, the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan did the same. His fist was wrapped in shadows and he punched at Lin Tian. Boom! Another big collision. The two of them were sent flying at the same time. Blood splashed in the void again. Lin Tian stabilized his body. The sun scripture circulated, and the bloody hole in his abdomen quickly healed. Then, he did not stop. He directly stepped forward, and a bloody crack appeared behind him. The place where Heavenly Lord Daoran comprehended the Tao, the primitive mountain, the divine weapon, the giant bell, and more than a dozen divine images pressed down on the void. The void rumbled as they rushed toward the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan. The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan's chest flashed with a dark light. His injury also began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing Lin Tian rushing toward him, his eyes were gloomy. He directly supported the Dark Shadow clan's killing technique. The sky was filled with killing lights. Soon, the two of them collided again. Boom! Violent hurricanes swept out in all directions. Destructive waves intertwined. For a moment, a large area of trees in the old mountain was destroyed. Huge cracks appeared on the ground. Crack! As the hurricanes spread out, the void could not withstand the tyrannical power. Suddenly it shattered, and a large area collapsed. In ancient Sand City, many cultivators flew into the sky and watched the two of them fight in the old mountain. They could not help but gasp. The scene was just too shocking. Looking at it, the battle had not been long. It was not even 15 minutes. However, almost half of the forest outside the city was destroyed. The void was shattered, and the ground was cracked. It was true that wherever the two of them fought, nothing could be preserved. Everything was destroyed in an instant. Boom! 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 In the forest, the two of them kept colliding, and killing lights filled the sky. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He performed the divining divine art and supported more divining divine elephants. They sealed all the space around the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan. Then, he called out the 4 symbols Tao diagram and pressed it down on the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan. The light of the 4 symbols Tao diagram annihilated all the killing lights of the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan. Once again, he was in front of his opponent. The divining divine elephants, such as the primitive mountain and the divine weapon, directly pressed down on the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan. Puff! The young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan coughed up blood and flew more than 1,000 feet away. Such a scene undoubtedly made the hearts of the cultivators in the ancient city tremble again. Many of them could not help but gasp. The young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan is injured again. This is Weiwei's disadvantage? Someone's heart palpitated. In the forest, Lin Tian's eyes were indifferent. He walked toward the young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan step by step. Didn't you say that I am no match for you in a head-on battle? Why are you in such a sorry state now? The young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan's clothes were stained with blood. After hearing this, 2 cold lights flashed in his eyes. Don't be so proud. I am just warming up before the battle, he said coldly. Now the warm-up is over. In the next moment, with a boom, a majestic force rushed out of his body and spread out in all directions. For a moment, an incomparably oppressive wave spread out, causing the temperature of the space to drop sharply. This caused many cultivators in the ancient city to tremble violently. This aura was really too terrifying. Many of them could not help but tremble. The warm-up is over? So what? Lin Tian now. Chapter 701. The golden light was blazing like a divine sun, leaping around Lin Tian's body. He walked in the void like a sun god, and every step he took would leave a golden footprint in the air, causing many cultivators in ancient Sand City to tremble violently again. This aura is so terrifying! Some people's hearts palpitated. Many people's hearts trembled. Previously, these people had heard that Lin Tian was very strong and had killed a group of cultivators from the Ant clan and the Bone clan, including a few half-stepped Great Tao experts. However, that was only hearsay, and they did not have a deep impression of him. At this time, seeing Lin Tian in a real battle, the cultivators' hearts palpitated, and they all felt a chill run down their spines. Boom! Boom! In the old forest, two powerful auras swept out. One was soft, and the other was strong, and they collided, creating dazzling electric arcs. I'll kill you! The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan finally made his move after emitting a violent aura. Dozens of dark shadows rushed out from his body like a reverse waterfall, and they were shockingly powerful. He appeared to be very conceited, and his expression was cold. He attacked Lin Tian from the front with a punch, and in the blink of an eye, hundreds and thousands of dark fist shadows appeared. This is the Dark Shadow clan's Great Shadow Fist? It's that kind of fist technique. It's mainly soft, and it's said that it can even shatter divine power. Most importantly, there are too many fist shadows, and they're all real. They're all activated by special means. Even if it's just one punch, it'll be disastrous. In ancient Sand City, many cultivators said. Buzz. In the old forest, densely packed fist shadows covered the sky and pressed down on Lin Tian. It was as if the fists had turned into a sea of attacks. This scene was very terrifying and difficult to resist. Lin Tian's eyes were cold, and his expression did not change at all. He took a step forward. The sun scripture was activated, and golden divine light surrounded his body. He did not use any special magic, but raised his right hand, clenched his fist, and punched. Golden divine light intertwined at the tip of his fist. At this moment, his fist seemed to be made of gold, and it was full of power. Dong! The void shook violently as if the sky was about to collapse. It was also as if an ear-piercing clap of thunder rang out in the clouds, causing many people's eardrums to hurt. In front of him, the space shattered on the spot. The sky full of fist shadows created by the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan were instantly shattered. The golden fist light swept forward like a monstrous wave. This? With just a simple punch, with the Dark Shadow clan's Great Shadow Expansion Fist, what a terrifying physique! Is this the Barbarian King physique? The golden light on the surface of his body is also very strange. It seems to be completely suppressing the softness of the Great Shadow Expansion Fist. The crowd's hearts jumped. Lin Tian leaped across, shattering the great developing Shadow Fist's fist shadows that filled the sky. He once again swung his fist, and the second fist came crashing down. At this moment, he channeled the Heart Sutra of Sunday. The golden divine power was both yang and firm, which perfectly countered the softness of the great diffusing Shadow Fist. At the same time, his physique was perfect and powerful. With one punch, he could shatter all things and completely suppress the fist force contained within the great diffusing Shadow Fist. Bang! In the blink of an eye, he stepped in front of the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan and landed a solid punch on his chest. The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan was sent flying. He coughed up a mouthful of blood and was severely injured by this punch. So what if you're done warming up? Just like before, you're not good enough, Lin Tianling said. His black hair was like a waterfall. He took a step forward, and his golden fist kept pressing down, opening and closing wide. Bang! 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 His fists landed on the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan again and again. Many cultivators felt their scalps go numb. Ah! The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan roared. His whole body flickered with dim light, and a monstrous wave of dim light was generated. It forcefully sent Lin Tian flying. At this moment, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and the bones all over his body kept cracking. His hands were wrapped with rays of dark light. He stared at Lin Tian cruelly and coldly, and spat out 4 words coldly. Purifying shadow miasma. Boom! The heaven and earth shook fiercely, and it was so oppressive that it felt like heavenly thunder had fallen. In the next moment, boundless dim shadows rushed out from the young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan, and instantly covered the entire old forest. These dim shadows were like rolling waves. Wherever they passed, the void was distorted, and everything was destroyed. They cut off all escape routes for Lin Tian. This was a terrifying scene. As far as the eye could see, the direction of the old forest seemed to have turned into night. No, it was even more terrifying than night. It was almost impossible to see anything with the naked eye. Only the dim shadows flickered in that space. Crack! The void was distorted, and then it shattered. Spatial turbulence poured out. In the direction of ancient Sand City, some people stared in that direction and suddenly trembled violently. They felt as if their heads had been ruthlessly knocked by someone. Some people directly fell from the sky and smashed into the streets of ancient Sand City, creating a human-shaped crater. People with ordinary cultivation, don't look there. The purifying shadow miasma of the Dark Shadow clan not only has astonishing destructive power, but it also has the power to destroy one's mind. Be careful of your sea of consciousness being damaged, or even shattered. A senior cultivator warned in a low voice. Many people turned pale with fright. Some of the weaker cultivators hurriedly lowered their heads, not daring to look in front of them. Die! In the old forest, a chilling voice sounded. The young supreme master of the Dark Shadow clan was surrounded by a dark light. After he used the purifying miasma divine art, the entire ancient forest had turned into a world of darkness. At this moment, he was walking in this world of darkness as if he was the emperor of the ages. Lin Tian was in this place. He only felt dizzy and his sea of consciousness kept shaking. Moreover, there was a terrifying destructive power surging in from all directions, as if it was going to shatter his physical body. It forced him to take 3 steps back. And this was only him. If it were any other cultivator at the same level as him, they would have been killed in an instant. However, he only took 3 steps back. His eyes were icy cold, and his entire body flickered with golden divine light like a burning sun. At the same time, the yin-yang lotus sea in his sea of consciousness swayed, releasing strands of black and white yin-yang divine light that firmly protected his sea of consciousness. Buzz! With a shift of his mind, the 4 symbols Tao diagram appeared. After fully activating it, it spun slowly, and the light spread in all directions. In an instant, with him as the center, the dark light around him disappeared little by little and collapsed under the 4 symbols Tao diagram. The yin-yang puppet flashed. His eyes were cold. He rushed out with the 4 symbols Tao diagram. The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan was shocked. He had used one of the core secret techniques of the Dark Shadow clan, but now it was broken so easily. You, Puff! Lin Tian used the divining divine art to create the 9 Springs sacred sword. He rushed over and slashed a glaring bloody wound on the young supreme being's chest. The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan screamed and flew back again. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. The yin-yang puppet flashed and stepped forward again. The divining divine art created a primitive mountain that fell on the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan. Puff! The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan coughed out a big mouthful of blood. He was hit by the primitive mountain and fell into the void. This, the purifying miasma divine art has been broken. The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan is at the seventh sky of the connecting immortal realm, but that person seems to be at the second sky of the connecting immortal realm. He can't beat him. In ancient Sand City, everyone was horrified. In the void, Lin Tian's whole body shone with golden divine light. He fell from the sky like a sun god. He came to 10 feet away from the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan and slashed at him with the 9 Springs sacred sword. "Get lost!" the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan roared. Although half of his chest had been caved in, his eyes were extremely cold. He used the unique body movement of the Dark Shadow clan. At the same time, he performed many secret techniques that fell on Lin Tian. Lin Tian held up many divine images. Some of them protected his body, and some of them attacked. The 9 Springs sacred sword slashed out sword energy all over the sky. Boom! 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 Shocking waves of divine power swept out. The old forest collapsed inch by inch, and the gravel flew into the sky. This was a terrifying battle. In the blink of an eye, the two had fought hundreds of rounds. A full 6 hours had passed. Puff! A blood-red light suddenly appeared. Lin Tian waved the 9 Springs sacred sword, bringing out a large amount of blood-red light. It almost cut off the arm of the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan. The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan roared. He used his divine technique again, and the sky was filled with murderous light. Lin Tian's body flashed with golden light, leaving after images all over the sky. He stepped in front of the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan and punched him with his left hand. With a bang, the young supreme being was sent flying dozens of feet away. Another mouthful of blood fell into the void. His whole body glowed, and the golden light became even more dazzling. He threw the 9 Springs sacred sword directly, and it pierced through the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan. "That's all you got," he said coldly. Stepping on the ground, he moved as if he was stepping on Taoist marks. He raised his golden fist, and the void was distorted by the pressure. With a bang, the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan was hit by the punch again. 2 of his ribs were broken, and he slammed hard into a big rock dozens of feet away. "Ah!" the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan roared. Blood gushed out of his mouth, but his eyes were full of venom. "Tough skin," Lin Tianling said. He took a step forward, and his golden fist shattered everything. Bang! 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 The sound of the fist hitting the rock kept coming out. Lin Tian punched and sent the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan flying again and again. In the process, he had to admit that the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan was indeed very powerful. Although the young supreme being's physical body was not as strong as his, it was not much weaker. After taking dozens of punches from him, the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan did not collapse. It was just a little damaged. "Let's see how long you can last," he said coldly. He raised his golden fist and punched out. The whole space rumbled. With a bang, the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan was sent flying, and he coughed up blood again. Lin Tianling snorted, stepped forward, and punched mercilessly. In ancient Sand City, a group of cultivators stared at Lin Tian. They were all scared, and some couldn't help but tremble. They never thought that this young man who came out of nowhere was so powerful that he could suppress the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan. Boom! 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 Divine energy swept through the old forest like raging waves hitting the shore. In the blink of an eye, another 6 hours had passed. Lin Tian and the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan were fighting. It's dark. Someone looked at the sky. At this moment, in the old forest ahead, the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan, who was sent flying by Lin Tian again, roared, and the whole old forest shook. "The world of darkness is the world of the Dark Shadow clan!" The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow clan roared. He guided his blood to form a seal and drew a blood diagram in front of his chest. Endless darkness and shadows, turn into my weapon and kill everything. Buzz! In an instant, the invisible darkness in this world seemed to come alive. It was as if it had its own consciousness and form. It turned into monstrous waves and swept through the sky. Chapter 702. The formless darkness surged like a tide, pressing down on Lin Tian from all directions like waves of tempestuous waves. It has almost all the books you want to read. It's much more stable than ordinary websites and updates faster. It's all text with no advertisements. Lin Tian's expression changed, and his heart trembled slightly. These dark waves made him feel cold, and he quickly dodged. Rumble! The dark waves roared, and dense shadows pressed down, sweeping across all directions. The young supreme being of the Dark Shadow tribe said in a cold voice, "For my tribe, the night is the best environment for battle. In the night, my tribe's techniques can be unleashed to the highest level. In the night, the endless darkness is my weapon. You have nowhere to run. There is no space for you to hide." As he finished speaking, the formless darkness shook and pressed down in all directions. With a bang, Lin Tian was pushed back by a dark wave, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. At this time, all the darkness and shadows in this space seemed to come alive and press toward him. He condensed the 9-spring sword in his hand and slashed out rays of sword light, sweeping away all the dark waves around him. However, this was just a drop in the bucket, because in the next moment, more dark waves surged toward him, and he was a little tired to deal with them. In the night, the darkness and shadows are endless. I will use my tribe's profound divine technique at this time. You can't do anything, the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow tribe said. More dark waves surged, as if endless demonic light rushed out from the dark demon realm, and it made people's hearts tremble. The Dark Shadow tribe is very special. Most of their techniques are related to darkness and shadows. In the night, it is indeed the best environment for the Dark Shadow tribe to fight. That person is now at a disadvantage. He is being suppressed. In ancient Sand City, many people's hearts trembled. The world was dark, and there were only a few stars in the sky. Dark waves rolled in the old forest, and shadows pressed toward Lin Tian from all directions. Lin Tian was forced to retreat again and again, and the dark shadows were endless. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and he looked a little embarrassed. However, with his strong fighting ability, he gradually adapted to the profound divine technique of the Dark Shadow tribe in the night. You use the darkness of the night to fight against the shadows. What if, in this place, these things suddenly disappeared? After it disappears, how much power will your technique have left? He said indifferently. The young supreme martial artist of the Dark Shadow clan wore a mocking expression. Disappear? What a joke! Who do you think you are? Can you make the night disappear? Just illuminate this place, he said indifferently. With a boom, a boundless energy rushed out from his body. It was unprecedentedly strong, and it caused the night sky to tremble. In the next moment, an extremely blazing golden divine sun rose behind him. It was completely formed by him channeling the Heart Sutra of the sun. It was condensed from his dense divine power. The astonishing divine light directly illuminated the entire ancient forest. He created a sun? Within ancient Sand City, all the cultivators trembled violently, all of them aghast. At this moment, as far as the eye could see, the blazing divine sun hung high in the sky, emitting an incomparably blazing light. It was like a real sun, completely illuminating the surroundings. This was not simply illuminating the darkness of the night. Instead, under this divine sun, the darkness of that space seemed to have disappeared, and it truly became an independent world of daylight. How much divine power does one need to be able to do this? Moreover, ordinary divine power doesn't seem to be able to do this. His divine power is like the power of the sun. Some of the older generation experts were shocked. At this moment, in the ancient forest, the young supreme being of the Dark Shadow tribe was also moved. For the first time, his expression changed greatly. As soon as the divine sun formed by Lin Tian appeared, it directly suppressed the darkness of this place, causing the power of his technique to be weakened by more than half. "Damn it!" he roared loudly. His hands formed a seal, and he performed more secret techniques of the Dark Shadow tribe. For a moment, endless murderous light of shadows surged, crazily pressing down on Lin Tian. After Lin Tian raised the divine sun to disperse the darkness, the threat of the young Supreme Being's profound divine technique instantly disappeared. The pressure was also gone. His eyes were indifferent. Facing the secret techniques of the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe, he directly raised the four symbols Tao diagram. 2 layers of seals appeared, and in an instant, all the secret techniques of the young Supreme Being were annihilated. "Are you in a hurry?" he said coldly. With a shake of his feet, he was extremely fast. With one step, he appeared in front of the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe. With a bang, he waved his iron fist and sent the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe flying, causing a large amount of blood to splash out. "Ah!" the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe roared. He summoned a dark shield in front of him, and at the same time, a large amount of murderous light sputtered out. "Middle-grade Tao weapon!" In ancient Sand City, a cultivator exclaimed. The might of a mid-grade Tao artifact was very terrifying. However, in the next moment, these people were shocked again. In the ancient forest, an even stronger wave of energy spread out. There, a divine fire furnace appeared above their heads. This is, the aura is stronger than the dark shield of the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe. Could it be a high-grade Tao weapon? Everyone was shocked. In the ancient forest, Lin Tian's eyes were cold and indifferent. The divine fire furnace hovered above his head and pressed down on the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe. Bang! With a crisp sound, the dark shadow shield of the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe was directly sent flying. At the same time, the divine fire furnace trembled under Lin Tian's control. The furnace mouth tilted, and flames fell from the sky, drowning the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe. "Arg!" the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe screamed. The flames spewed out from the superior grade Tao weapon were not simple. They were enough to burn everything, causing the severely injured young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe to almost turn into a human-shaped torch. It was very tragic. "Extinguish!" Amidst the screams, the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe roared. Shadow light rushed out of his body and pushed the flames away. However, at this moment, Lin Tian pressed over. "It's about time to end it!" A cold voice sounded. Lin Tian raised his hand and formed a seal. At this moment, he directly summoned the reincarnation diagram of the king's territory. Divine light spread in all directions. The young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe roared and cast a strange technique. The sky was filled with shadows and his aura was extremely strong. However, such a strange technique was somewhat weak when facing the reincarnation diagram. It was instantly annihilated. "Die!" Lin Tian rushed over, and the reincarnation diagram shone and pressed down on the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe. The young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe screamed again. Unfortunately, he couldn't break free from the reincarnation diagram at all. He only lasted for 3 breaths before exploding with a poof, leaving nothing behind. In an instant, the world fell silent. "He's dead!" In ancient Sand City, someone muttered with trembling lips. In the ancient forest, the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe had disappeared. Only a bit of blood mist floated in the air and was blown into the distance by the wind, causing all the cultivators in ancient Sand City to tremble and be shocked. After a few breaths, these people all looked at Lin Tian again. This person came over and killed the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow tribe. A young Supreme Being. In the ancient forest, Lin Tian's clothes were stained with blood. He was seriously injured, and the divine power in his body was almost dried up. He panted slightly, and the divine sun supporting him collapsed. He waved his hand and took back the Dark Shadow tribe's young Supreme Being's shield. After erasing the young Supreme Being's spiritual imprint on it, he threw it into the stone ring. At the same time, he put away the divine fire cauldron. He looked in the direction of ancient Sand City and didn't stop. He stepped on the void and left step by step. Even after he left for a long time, the cultivators in ancient Sand City were still in shock. He killed the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow Tribe, who was at the 7th level of the Ascension Realm, with a cultivation of the 2nd level of the Ascension Realm. There were 5 small levels between them. Where did this monster come from? His physical body is too abnormal. The pure physical strength is simply unstoppable. Could it be the barbarian king body? Not only his physical body, but also that golden divine power. It's too extraordinary. I've never seen it before. Many cultivators discussed. Then, everyone thought of the most important thing at the same time. The young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow Tribe was killed. The Dark Shadow Tribe is going crazy, some cultivators murmured. After Lin Tian left ancient Sand City, he concealed his aura and came to an inconspicuous deep mountain. He found a secluded place deep in the mountain and sat down cross-legged. He circulated the Heart Sutra of Sun to heal his injuries. Buzz! Faint golden light surrounded his body, and his aura gradually became stronger. The night passed quickly, and a new day came. The morning sun rose, sprinkling the land with its morning light. Lin Tian stood up. After circulating the Heart Sutra of Sun for a night, his injuries were completely healed. He glanced at the old forest, then stepped out and walked outside. Not long after, he appeared at the edge of the old forest. A group of cultivators walked by from afar, and the sound of discussion entered his ears. The Ant Tribe, the Dark Shadow Tribe, and the Bone Tribe are all angry, especially the Dark Shadow Tribe and the Ant Tribe. They're almost crazy now. Forget about the Bone Tribe, but how can the Ant Tribe and the Dark Shadow Tribe not be crazy? All of their young Supreme Beings had been killed. This loss is too great. It's said that the Ant Tribe and the Dark Shadow Tribe sent out dozens of half-step Great Tao experts. It seems that there are even Great Tao experts who came out and vowed to kill that person. But speaking of which, that brother is really strong. He killed the young Supreme Being of the Ant Tribe and the Bone Tribe. He even forced his way to ancient Sand City and killed the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow Tribe. He's really ruthless. Not only is he ruthless, but he's also very strong, terrifyingly strong. According to the rumors, that person killed the young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow Tribe when he was at the 2nd heaven of the connecting immortal realm. The young Supreme Being of the Dark Shadow Tribe was at the 7th heaven of the connecting immortal realm. He's definitely a heaven-defying monster. It's said that person should be just an itinerant cultivator. Now, the Ant Tribe, the Dark Shadow Tribe, and the Bone Tribe, 3 large tribes want to kill him. This is simply, how can they stop them? These few large clans all have Wuxian powerhouses holding down the fort. Who knows? Anyway, it has nothing to do with small cultivators like us. That's true. However, I really hope that person can make the Ant Tribe, the Bone Tribe, and the Dark Shadow Tribe dizzy. These large tribes don't have any good people. Shh! Lower your voice. You don't want to live anymore. As the crowd spoke, they quickly walked away. Lin Tian stood at the edge of the forest and didn't step out. After hearing the words, he narrowed his eyes slightly. Dozens of half-step Great Tao experts and even Great Tao experts have come out? They've really been forced into a corner. He smiled indifferently. He wasn't surprised by this. It was completely within his expectations. After all, he killed the young Supreme Beings of the Ant Tribe and the Dark Shadow Tribe. It was equivalent to killing the saints of these 2 large tribes. He didn't walk out of the forest. Instead, he strode into the forest and walked towards another large mountain. As he walked, he cultivated Rees. Now, both the Ant Tribe and the Dark Shadow Tribe had sent out Great Tao Realm experts. He naturally wouldn't foolishly rush out at this time. After all, although he was powerful now and could kill half-step Great Tao experts, he was still very weak when compared to Great Tao Realm experts. He was definitely no match for them. He was thinking of cultivating the Yin Yang Hua to the 5th level first. In this way, even if he wasn't a match for great Dao realm experts when he encountered them, he could still escape safely with the 5th level of the Yin Yang Hua. He strode into the old forest, focusing his essence, energy, and spirit. He moved with a very special footwork that looked fantastical and mysterious. He was seriously cultivating the Yin Yang Hua. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. In these 7 days, he cultivated the Yin Yang Hua and moved with a mysterious footwork. He didn't know how many old forests and large mountains he had crossed, but his control of the Yin Yang Hua had improved significantly. In another half a month, I should be able to reach the 5th level of the Yin Yang Hua, he muttered to himself. He casually swept a glance around. He didn't know where this was, but he didn't care. After taking a deep breath, he continued to cultivate the Yin Yang Hua and moved with a mysterious footwork. However, at the next moment, his body trembled slightly. He suddenly turned his head and looked at a call in the distance. Over there, he suddenly felt a faintly familiar aura. Baiqiu? He was slightly shocked. P.S. This chapter has been edited for a long time and is a little late. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Chapter 703. Looking at the call in the distance, Lin Tian was pleasantly surprised. He did not expect to sense Baiqiu's aura here. Although the aura was very weak, he was sure that he was not mistaken. Read the full article without hesitation, he immediately flew into the air and rushed towards the colonel. Soon, he arrived near the colonel. Looking from afar, there was an ordinary village in the colonel. There were about 30 families, and some domestic animals were jumping around in the village. In the village? A strange look flashed across Lin Tian's eyes. The aura of Baiqiu he sensed came from the village. He landed about 300 meters away from the village and walked on foot. Soon, he arrived at the village. The village was very simple. When the villagers saw Lin Tian walk in, they did not scold him. They only looked at him curiously. "Young man, do you need something?" An old man walked over with a walking stick. He gave off a very kind feeling. Lin Tian walked up and said politely, "I do need something. If I've disturbed you, please forgive me." It's fine. The old man smiled and shook his head. Because he had lived for so long, he knew how to read people. He asked, "Young man, you seem to be looking for something?" Lin Tian nodded and said, "I won't lie to you. I am indeed, Grandpa." A clear child's voice rang out. In the distance, a little girl around 5 years old ran over. She had a pair of pigtails and looked like a porcelain doll. Lin Tian tilted his head and looked. His eyes immediately focused on the little girl's chest. There was a sparkling green jade hanging there. Baiqiu's aura came from the jade. "Grandpa, look! It's little flower." The little girl ran to the old man's side and held a purple flower in her hand. She presented it as if she was presenting a treasure. The old man rubbed the little girl's head with a doting expression. Chuckling, the old man said to Lin Tian, "Ow, this is my granddaughter Ai." Lin Tian nodded, but his eyes were fixed on the green jade on the little girl's chest. He suddenly remembered that he had seen Baiqiu wear this green jade before. The little girl grabbed the purple flower and raised her head to look at Lin Tian. She blinked her eyes and said, "Big brother, big brother." The little girl's voice was crisp and clear, making her seem very cute and likable. Lin Tian couldn't help but smile. He took out a few common baodan from his stone ring and handed them to the little girl, saying, "Candy." The little girl happily took it. "Thank you, big brother." Blinking her eyes, the little girl put a baodan into her mouth. Her eyes curved into a pair of small crescent moons, making her look even cuter. "Sweet Rees." "Thank you, young man." The old man thanked Lin Tian. "Ow. You're welcome, uncle. The little girl is very cute," Lin Tianao said. Then, his expression became more serious as he seriously asked the old man for guidance. "Uncle, may I ask where your granddaughter got this piece of green jade hanging around her neck?" He remembered very clearly that this green jade indeed belonged to Baichio. He couldn't be wrong. Oh, this. The old man glanced at the green jade on the little girl's chest and said, I think it was more than a year ago. A very powerful pair of siblings came to our village and stayed in the village for a period of time. It just so happened that they stayed in my house for about 10 days. When they left, the girl of the siblings gave this green jade to little Ai. Hearing the old man's words, the little girl raised her little head and said sweetly, Big sister, a powerful and beautiful sister. The little girl seemed to have thought of something. She waved her little hand in the air twice, as if she was punching. Lin Tian now smiled gently at the little girl. Bai Ziki and Baichio stayed in this small village for a period of time? He paused, looked at the old man, and asked again. Uncle, that pair of brother and sister are my friends. I've been looking for them. Uncle, why did they stay here? Where did they go when they finally left? He couldn't find any clues about Baiziki and Baichio in the prosperous world of cultivation, but he didn't expect that he would find them in this ordinary little village. This made him feel that there was a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Your friends? The old man was a little surprised. Yes. Lin Tiandao nodded seriously. The old man nodded. He didn't doubt Lin Tiandao's words. He smiled at Lin Tiandao and said, They came to the village to dig up something. Come with me. Lin Tiandao was a little surprised, but he didn't say anything. He followed behind the old man and walked toward the east end of the village. As they walked along the small village, the villagers greeted the old man and nodded at Lin Tiandao with smiles. They were all very kind. Ha! 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 Shouts came from the front. A group of children about 10 years old stood in an open space and practiced boxing. They looked quite impressive. This is the basic boxing of the Bai family. Lin Tian now couldn't help but be a little surprised. The old man followed Lin Tian's gaze and looked over. Seeing Lin Tian's astonishment, he explained with a smile. Back then, when that pair of brother and sister were in the village, a ferocious wolf coincidentally barged in, scaring many people. At that time, the little girl of the brother and sister subdued the ferocious wolf with a single slap, frightening all the villagers. Who would have thought that such a delicate little girl would actually have such powerful martial strength? She was thousands of times stronger than the strongest hunter in the village. Then, at that time, this group of little brats surrounded the girl and called her master, begging to learn martial arts. That girl was very generous and agreed immediately. In the next few days, she spent most of her time teaching this group of little brats martial arts. Now that so much time has passed, this group of little brats really do look a little bit better. Lin Tianyi was stunned. He finally understood why the old man had described Bai Ziki and Bai Chio as very powerful. At the beginning, he never thought that such a thing had happened in those 10 days. Let's go to the front. The old man smiled. Lin Tian now followed the old man here and found that this old well had been abandoned for a long time. The soil had obviously been excavated. At that time, the brother and sister were carving and drawing here. In the end, they dug out a piece of black stone the size of a baby. It was for that black stone that they came to the village. The old man said. Speaking of which, it was quite strange. That black stone looked very ordinary, but it was very cold. When the black stone was dug out on a hot summer day, the whole village seemed to have cooled down. Little Ai followed beside him and called out, Black stone, big black stone. Lin Tianyi smiled. Then, he squatted down and carefully separated the soil layer. After that, he found a piece of stone the size of a thumb under the soil layer. It was also black. He took it in his hand and immediately felt a chill. He also sensed a pure lunar aura contained in it. This is the lunar origin stone. His heart froze. The Taiyin origin stone was a stone formed by the natural condensation of the Taiyin power between heaven and earth. It was extremely valuable and had many miraculous effects. For the Taiyin body, the effects of the Taiyin origin stone were self-evident. It could strengthen the Taiyin source. No wonder they stayed here for 10 days. It turns out that they found the lunar origin stone here. He muttered to himself. Speaking of which, he was also surprised. He did not expect such a big piece of lunar origin stone to be born in this small village. The lunar origin stone was the size of a baby. In terms of value, it was comparable to Ling Jing, who weighed millions of kilograms. What happened after that? Old man, after that, where did that pair of siblings go? Lin Tianyi asked the old man. After that, I'm not sure. I only vaguely remember that they said they wanted to go to the God of Heaven mountain. The old man said. Lin Tianyi was puzzled. The God of Heaven mountain? Where is that? The old man pointed at a tall mountain in the distance and said, There, it's the mountain in the center. Lin Tianyi looked up. The God of Heaven mountain that the old man pointed at was very tall. Compared to the other mountains nearby, it was like a crane among chickens. He looked in that direction. The God of Heaven mountain was surrounded by wisps of white mist. At first, he did not pay much attention to it. However, as he looked at it seriously, his whole body shook violently. A roar came from his sea of consciousness, as if it had been hit by a heavy blow. It was as if a primordial ferocious beast lived in the mountain and roared fiercely at him. There? He was shocked, and a chill ran down his spine. He could not help but be shocked. One must know that he was now at the peak of the second heaven of the connecting immortal realm. He could even kill a powerhouse who was half a step away from the great path. But now, just by standing here and looking at that mountain from afar, his celestial body trembled, and a chill ran down his spine. That place was definitely not simple. He took a deep breath and asked the old man, Old man, is there anything special about this God of Heaven mountain? The old man thought for a while and said, I don't know what's special about it, but there is a story about it. It was a long time ago. It was said that a ball of strange light appeared in that mountain. Someone saw a celestial figure descend from the sky and land on that mountain like a god. Then, that mountain was called the God of Heaven mountain. As he spoke, the old man thought for a while and then shook his head. There doesn't seem to be anything else. Nothing major happened in that mountain. Lin Tianyi nodded. He frowned slightly and looked at the God of Heaven mountain in the distance again. Staring at the mountain, he subconsciously felt that that place was very dangerous. Did Bai Ziki and Bai Chiu really go there? After a pause, a light flashed in his eyes. He looked at the old man and said, Old man, I have a presumptuous request. Can I stay at your house for a few days? Don't worry, I can pay you. I won't stay for free. After being separated for several years, he finally found traces of Bai Ziki and Bai Chiu. He knew that the siblings might have gone to the God of Heaven mountain. Naturally, he had to go to the God of Heaven mountain. Although the siblings might have left long ago after entering the God of Heaven mountain, there might be some clues left behind. He had to search for them no matter what. Chapter 704. The old man was very simple. When he heard that Lin Tian wanted to stay for a few days, he immediately agreed. Let's just stay. What's the point of talking about money? Who doesn't have some difficulties when they are away from home? Come, this old man will make a room for you. You can stay as you wish. It's much more lively to have more people. This old man can't ask for anything more. Thank you, old man. Lin Tian sincerely thanked him. That night, Lin Tian stayed in this old man's house. He also found out that the old man was the village chief of this small village. Little AI was his only family member now. 3 years ago, little AI's parents died in the mouth of a wild beast when they went out hunting. Very soon, it was midnight. The sky was dotted with stars. Lin Tian didn't rest. Instead, he sat up on the bed and took out a few black waterstone platforms. He circulated the Heavenly One Soul technique and engraved the eternal killing formation on them. 1. A faint silver soul light flickered. His 5 fingers danced, and the eternal killing formation was quickly engraved on the black waterstones. Now that his cultivation had reached the peak of the second layer of the immortal realm, it was easier for him to engrave the eternal killing formation. The night passed quickly, and the morning sun rose. After about 6 hours, Lin Tian finished engraving a corner of the eternal killing formation and carefully put it away in the stone ring. "Big brother, it's time to eat." At this time, the sound of knocking came from outside. Little AI's voice came from outside the door. Lin Tianyi smiled. He didn't expect that the old man and the little girl would both wake up so early. It was obvious that the old man had made breakfast and asked little AI to wake him up. He quickly got up and opened the door. Little AI stood outside the door and looked at him with her small head. "Eat." Lin Tian smiled and rubbed the little girl's head. He held the little girl's hand and walked to the house next door. With his current cultivation, it was no problem for him to not eat for a few months. However, since the old man had prepared his share, how could he not eat? He was going to stay here for a few days. If he didn't eat, it would be abnormal no matter how he looked at it. After breakfast, he didn't return to his room. Instead, he strolled around the village. Now, although he had to inscribe the eternal killing formation and prepare to enter the God of Heaven mountain, it was impossible for him to lock himself up in his room to inscribe the formation in broad daylight. This was not good. After all, he was currently staying in a small village. Locking himself up in his room and not coming out in broad daylight was clearly very impolite. Little AI followed behind him like a little tail, jumping up and down from time to time, looking very lively and cute. Ha! Not long after, he walked to the empty space from before. It was still the same group of children from yesterday. They were all practicing on the empty space. He sat down on a nearby grindstone and smiled as he watched the group of children practice. For a moment, he felt that it was quite interesting. Little AI grabbed the bottom of his trousers and used him as a ladder to climb up. She sat in his arms and grabbed his clothes. From time to time, she would raise a small hand and wave it in the air, giving off a cute and naive feeling. There are almost all the books you want to read. It's much more stable than the average website, and the updates are faster. It's all text without advertisements. Lin Tianyi smiled and used one hand to protect the little girl, preventing her from accidentally falling down. Ha! 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 There were about a dozen children on the empty space. They were all boys. They had been practicing for 2 hours, and many of them were sweating. "Hey, can you fight with us?" Suddenly, a voice came from the front. In the empty space, a group of children stopped practicing. Among them, the oldest boy in a cotton-padded robe faced Lin Tian now. He was about 11 years old. Beside the boy, the other children were staring at Lin Tian. They all clenched their fists, and their eyes were shining. Obviously, they wanted to see Lin Tian fight with the oldest boy. Lin Tian was a little embarrassed, but he also felt that it was very interesting. He was a powerhouse in the immortal ascension realm, but now he was invited to fight by an ordinary 11-year-old boy. "Let's fight. We want to see how strong we are. The people in the village don't want to fight with us." The cotton-padded robe boy's body was quite sturdy. "Let's fight." "That's right." The other children followed suit. Lin Tian couldn't help but smile again. These little guys were all quite interesting. They actually invited him to fight. After a pause, he didn't refuse. He picked up little AI and carefully placed her on the grindstone. Then, he walked forward. "How should we fight?" he asked with a smile. The cotton-padded robed boy was a little excited. "A fair fight. Let's fight one-on-one here." Lin Tianyi smiled and nodded at the little boy. He stood still. The group of children surrounded him and cheered for the cotton-padded robed boy. "I'm coming!" the cotton-padded robed boy shouted. He rushed toward Lin Tian and threw a small fist at Lin Tian. Lin Tian put one hand behind his back and stretched out his right hand. The cotton-padded robed boy's fist smashed into his palm. He was quite strong, much stronger than ordinary people of the same age. This made him smile inwardly. 2 years of practicing martial arts was indeed useful. "Ha!" The cotton-padded robed boy tilted his body and threw a punch at Lin Tian from a special angle. Lin Tian stood still. His right hand accurately blocked the little guy's fist. Of course, he was only blocking. Moreover, he blocked with gentle force. He was worried that he would hurt the little boy. The cotton-padded robed boy was annoyed. He gathered his strength and shouted loudly. He circled around Lin Tian and threw punches and kicks. He was quite aggressive. Lin Tian nodded in his heart. Although the boy was only 11 years old, after practicing the Bai family's basic fist technique, according to the current situation, an ordinary adult would not be a match for him. Of course, he could see that the little boy only knew some skillful fist techniques. His strength increased a little, but he didn't have any cultivation. The other children were the same. Soon half an hour passed. The cotton-padded robed boy was so tired that he fell to the ground on his butt. He didn't have the strength to throw another punch. At the side, the other children were all extremely shocked. Their group of children had fought before, and the cotton-robed boy was the strongest amongst them. But now, Lin Tian hadn't even moved a single step, and actually caused the cotton-robed boy to collapse from exhaustion. "Do you want more?" Lin Tian joked. The cotton-padded robed boy quickly shook his head. He had no strength left. On the grindstone, little AI cheered. "Big brother won! He won! He won!" Lin Tian walked over and carried little AI down from the grindstone. The little girl grabbed his trousers and stood beside him. The cotton-padded robed boy looked at Lin Tian and said while panting, You are so powerful! I can feel that I am very powerful. Although I haven't fought with the adults in the village, I feel that I can definitely beat many of them. Also, you don't look strong. I thought that I could definitely beat you. I didn't expect that I would be defeated by you." Lin Tian was amused. It seemed that the little guy thought that he could definitely beat him, so he invited him to fight. "You little brat, you even invited others to fight. Do you know who this is?" Little AI's grandfather walked over and pointed at Lin Tian now. "This is the friend of the girl who taught you the fist technique." With the cotton-padded robed boy as the leader, the group of children immediately widened their eyes and exclaimed, "He is Master's sister's friend?" Then, in the next moment, the cotton-padded robed boy shouted. The group of children all became serious and bowed to Lin Tian in unison. "Hello, Martial Uncle!" Lin Tian. "So it's Martial Uncle. No wonder he is so powerful. That's right, that's right. Martial Uncle, please give us some pointers." The group of children immediately began to chatter. They looked at Lin Tian with excitement and anticipation. Lin Tian also felt that it was quite interesting. Since he had nothing to do during the day, he might as well accompany the group of children to practice their fist technique. "That is Little Stone, that is Li Kai, and that is—" The old man introduced the group of children to Lin Tian and said with a smile, "When that girl taught them the fist technique, she gave them some numbers. They were A-da, A-er, A-san, A-si. She called them that every time. She also looked very happy when she was practicing her fist technique." As he said that, the old man smiled. He had a nostalgic expression on his face. Lin Tian also smiled. When he saw the group of children drinking and practicing their fist technique, he thought to himself, Bai Chiu must like these little guys very much. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taught them the Bai family's basic fist technique, and he wouldn't have stayed in the village for 10 days. One had to know that 4 to 6 hours was more than enough for him to retrieve the lunar origin stone. He looked at the group of children and smiled slightly. Then he thought, these little guys are all Bai Chiu's disciples. He chuckled to himself. Interesting. In the next few days, he carved the eternal killing formation and refined some Baodan at night. During the day, he would stroll around the village with little AI and guide the group of children in their fist technique practice. Not long after, this group of children would always follow behind him and call him Martial Uncle, which made him feel both ashamed and amused at the same time. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. On this day, Lin Tian made all the preparations. He bid farewell to the old man and prepared to head to the God of Heaven mountain. "Be careful. You're welcome to come again." The old man smiled. "Big brother, Come and play again. Little AI waved her little hand. The group of children in the open space also came to send him off. They were very respectful to him, and called him, "Take care, Marshal Uncle." Lin Tian waved at everyone. Even though he had only stayed here for 5 days, he liked this village very much. The people in the village were very simple and kind. The village chief treated him warmly, and the group of children respected him very much. This was especially so for little AI. She stuck by his side all day long as if she was his younger sister. She was very likable. Living here for 5 days was 1,000,000 times more comfortable than living in the cultivation world. In the future, when I reach the end of my cultivation path, I'll find a small village like this to live in. It'll definitely be very comfortable, he thought to himself. After bidding farewell to the people in the village, he soon arrived at a place several hundred feet away from the village. He took one last look at the village before he rose into the air and flew into the distance. About 2 hours later, he arrived at the outskirts of a large mountain. God of Heaven Mountain! He narrowed his eyes slightly. From the outside, the God of Heaven Mountain looked very ordinary. There was nothing special about it. However, he could not forget the feeling he had when he seriously looked at this mountain in the village. His entire body turned cold as if he was being stared at by an ancient ferocious beast. This place was definitely not simple. He took a deep breath and directly stepped into the mountain. Soon, he was about 3,000 feet into the God of Heaven Mountain. When he arrived, wisps of white mist suddenly floated up from the mountain, causing his vision to become somewhat hazy. Lin Tian's cultivation was very powerful. Naturally, he did not care about the white mist. He continued to walk into the depths of the God of Heaven Mountain. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed. The old trees in the mountain were thick and sturdy. The branches and leaves were dense. There were many fallen leaves on the ground. When he stepped on them, they would make a rustling sound. Lin Tian continued to walk into the depths of the God of Heaven Mountain while looking around. Suddenly, his gaze fell on a yellow stone beside him. His eyes immediately narrowed. No! I've already passed by this place. Chapter 705. Genius 1 second remember, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The yellow stone was very ordinary. There were some engravings on it. Lin Tian vaguely remembered that he had just walked past this place and walked straight into the God of Heaven Mountain. But now, he saw this yellow stone again. Did I remember wrongly? He frowned. After a pause, he made an arc-shaped mark on the yellow stone. Then, he stepped forward and continued walking. Soon an hour passed. After walking for an hour, he stopped. His eyes narrowed as a yellow stone covered in engravings appeared in his field of vision. There was an arc-shaped mark on it, and it was the symbol he had engraved before. Now, he had no more doubts. He had been walking in circles in this area and had not really walked out. It's really not simple. A light flashed in his eyes. It should be known that he was now at the peak of the second heaven of the connecting immortal realm. But he was unknowingly sealed in this area and could not move forward. This was a bit shocking. Taking a deep breath, he stood still. Strands of dragon patterns flickered under his feet, spreading to the underground world. At the same time, they spread out in all directions to explore this world. In the blink of an eye, another hour passed. At this time, a divine light flashed in his eyes. More dragon patterns spread out, turning into light chains that rushed up. There were hundreds of them. They rushed forward like divine dragons, forming a big light circle. He strode forward. The dragon pattern on his right hand flickered. After a pause, he pressed toward the light circle with dragon patterns in front of him. Hum! The space trembled. He felt a strong force coming from the front. It was as shocking as the galaxy. It made his heart tremble, and he was about to be sent flying. But at this time, the sword pattern in his right hand flashed with a faint light. It actually made the trembling in his heart disappear. At the same time, his body sank into the light circle with dragon patterns. With a whoosh, he felt as if he had passed through a barrier. Then, in the next moment, his body suddenly felt cold. When he looked around again, he couldn't help but tremble slightly. At this moment, the environment around him had completely changed. The lush old forest had disappeared, and the fresh air was gone. Now, the space he was in was dusky. There were blood-red mountains lying horizontally, and some withered plants growing on them. The air was filled with a kind of eerie cold air, just like the legendary Nine-Nether Demon realm. Lin Tian's expression changed slightly. Is it because there is an extremely powerful seal in the God of Heaven mountain? There is a special power that seals this place to prevent others from entering? This is the core of the God of Heaven mountain. He had used the dragon mark to explore the old forest's ley lines, but he had never thought that he would suddenly enter such a space. As he thought about it, he suddenly frowned slightly. According to the current situation, even if Bai Ziki and Bai Chiu had entered the God of Heaven mountain, they must have only gone around the mountain for a while. It was impossible for them to enter this blood-red space. One had to know that he had used the dragon burial scripture to explore for an hour. Moreover, it seemed that the sword pattern in his hand had lit up just now, which allowed him to accidentally break through the invisible barrier in the God of Heaven mountain and enter this space. Even he had entered under such circumstances, so it was impossible for Bai Ziki and Bai Chiu to enter this place. This made him frown even more. It was not easy to find traces of the siblings, but now, it was broken again. Hum! Suddenly, the divine sword in his sea of consciousness shook slightly, and immediately, his thoughts were pulled into his sea of consciousness. The divine sword swayed, and a ray of 7-colored light was produced. It spread out in his sea of consciousness, and it happened to be heading toward the depths of this space. This is? Lin Tian's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he raised his head to look into the depths. According to his experience, the divine sword in his sea of consciousness would not move under normal circumstances. However, once it moved, there could only be two situations. The first was that it had sensed the sword's soul fragment, and the second was that it had sensed other treasures. He looked into the depths of this unknown space. To be honest, he did not want to go into the depths. He did not even know where this place was. Moreover, just by looking at the surface, this space was similar to a dangerous place. However, now that the divine sword had vibrated, he secretly focused and decided to be careful and go into the depths to take a look. Literature building, perhaps, there was a fifth sword soul fragment in the depths of this space, or there might be other treasures. He took a deep breath, and then exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and carefully stepped into the depths. This space was very dark, and there were wisps of gray fog floating in the air. Lin Tian stepped on the slightly damp ground and walked into the depths of this space. Soon, he had walked a few hundred feet, and he felt that the coldness in the air had become stronger. At the same time, as he walked in this dark space, he felt that his body seemed to have become much heavier. It was as if there was a huge rock weighing 10,000 kilograms on his shoulders. It was much more strenuous to walk compared to the outside world. In this space, the gravity is many times stronger than the outside world, he muttered to himself. When he had first entered the path of cultivation, back in the Nine-Yang Martial House, he had felt that the gravity in the Martial House's gravity area was different from the normal world. It would make his body heavy, and it would be difficult to walk. The current situation was similar to that time. Of course, the degree of increase in gravity was far more exaggerated than in the Nine-Yang Martial House's gravity training area, and they could not be mentioned in the same breath. One had to know that he was now at the second sky of the connecting immortal realm, and this space could make him feel that his body had obviously become heavier. This meant that the gravity in this space was much stronger than the outside world. Of course, he was just a little surprised, and he did not care too much. After all, the gravity was not strong enough to make it difficult for him to walk. He continued to walk into the depths of this space. Gradually, there were wisps of blood-colored fog in the air, floating from the depths of this space. After that, he walked forward for more than 10 feet, and he suddenly stopped. He tilted his head and looked to the right, 3 feet away. There, a cloud of blood-colored fog intertwined, and gradually condensed into a blood shadow. The blood shadow was in the shape of a human. It had sharp claws, and its eyes were demonic green. It looked a little evil, and as soon as it appeared, it pounced toward Lin Tian. Lin Tian raised his hand, and slashed with his sword. With a sizzling sound, the blood shadow collapsed, but in the next moment, it reformed again, without any damage. It pounced toward Lin Tian again, as if it saw Lin Tian as the most delicious prey. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed. This time, a black and white lotus petal floated out from between his eyebrows, and quickly rushed forward. With a sizzling sound, the blood shadow exploded, and this time, it did not reform. An evil spirit body condensed from evil chi? He muttered to himself. After thinking for a while, he turned around and continued to walk deeper. However, just as he turned around, his footsteps stopped. At some point in time, the blood-red mist floating in the air had become thicker. At this moment, clusters of blood-red mist scattered and intertwined, condensing into a dense mass of blood-red figures that almost occupied this blood-red land. These blood shadows all had demonic red eyes, and they stared at Lin Tian eerily. Then, they all pounced toward Lin Tian. In an instant, the air in this space became even colder. Lin Tian propped up the yin-yang lotus sea. Against these evil spirits without physical bodies, his spiritual sea phenomenon was the most effective way to kill them. Buzz! The yin-yang lotus sea appeared, and the black and white lotus petals vibrated together, making sonorous sounds like divine swords, preparing to slash forward. However, in the next moment, a glint flashed across his eyes, and he put away the yin-yang lotus sea. This place is more suitable for cultivating the yin-yang puppet in this situation, he muttered to himself. Thinking about it, in this space where the gravity was many times higher than that of the outside world, he relied on the yin and yang hua to dodge the attacks of these dense blood shadows. This was definitely a rare training for his speed, which could greatly improve his control of the yin and yang hua in a short period of time. It'll work! He put away the yin-yang lotus sea and directly stepped on the yin-yang puppet to dodge the attacks when the densely packed blood shadows rushed over. The divine power in his body circulated, and his footsteps were strange. While dodging the blood shadows, he left golden footprints on the ground. Whoosh! 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 For a moment, the sound of air being torn apart reverberated in this space. Gradually, more and more blood shadows appeared, and their attacks became fiercer. When Lin Tian used the yin-yang puppet, the divine power in his body was naturally depleted faster. About 8 hours later, he felt that his divine power was somewhat depleted. However, his expression was very calm in the face of this. He continued to use the duality steps to dodge the attacks of the dense blood shadows while he took out a sparkling and translucent pill from the stone ring. After putting it in his mouth, his divine power immediately began to recover rapidly. This was the Baodan that he had specially refined in the small village before entering the God of Heaven mountain. It could recover divine power extremely quickly, and it was one of the preparations he had made for challenging the God of Heaven mountain. At this moment, it came in handy. Whoosh! 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 The sound of air being torn apart became louder and louder, and the frequency of it also became higher. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. On this day, Lin Tian was like a golden humanoid lightning flashing among the densely packed blood shadows. He was unbelievably fast, and it was dizzying. It was impossible to see his movements clearly. I've finally reached the 5th level! A brilliant light flashed across his eyes. With the help of this special space, the dense blood shadows, and the Baodan that he had refined in advance to recover divine power, he had finally cultivated the yin-yang puppet to a higher level, reaching the 5th level of the yin-yang puppet. At this moment, he clearly felt relaxed. The super-strong gravity in this space seemed to have disappeared, and he could not feel the slightest influence. He stopped moving and no longer dodged. He stood calmly among the blood shadows. "Thank you very much," he muttered to himself and smiled. With a buzzing sound, he propped up the yin-yang lotus sea. The black and white lotus petals clanged and slashed down like a rain of swords. Whoosh! 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 With crisp sounds, the densely packed blood shadows were shattered into pieces and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chapter 706. Amidst the dense blood shadows, Lin Tian put away the yin-yang lotus sea. He glanced at this place and continued to walk into the depths of this space. Almost all the books you want to read are here. It's much more stable than the average website and updates faster. It's all text with no advertisements. More information. In just 3 days, he had reached the 5th tier of the yin and yang puppet. He was quite happy. Now, with the help of the 5th tier of the yin and yang puppet, his speed had increased greatly. He was slightly faster than ordinary Great Tao cultivators. This space was dark. The spiritual qi was thin, and the air did not smell good. It was mixed with a dark and evil aura. As he walked deeper, Lin Tian gradually calmed down. He became more careful and cautious. After all, this space was not ordinary. He still remembered the feeling of fear when he first looked at the God of Heaven mountain. He knew that the feeling came from this blood-colored space. There might be treasures here, but there was definitely danger. De Bie! De Bie! De Bie! The surroundings were very quiet. He walked alone, and the sound of his footsteps could be heard from time to time. A lake that was almost dry appeared in front of him. Lin Tian frowned slightly. His eyes flashed as he stared at the lake. In the next moment, with a rumbling sound, the lake churned, and 3 strange creatures rushed out from within. They were covered in white fur, like the white apes from ancient times. With a roar, they quickly pounced towards Lin Tian, their yin qi oppressive. Lin Tian propped up the strange phenomenon in his sea of knowledge. 3 black and white lotus petals rushed forward and sank into the bodies of the 3 strange creatures. Immediately, the 3 strange creatures let out ear-piercing screams. Their eyes were bloodshot, and their claws tore at their heads. Because their claws were very sharp, there was blood flowing out. It was dark red. Demon spirits born from the nourishment of the evil aura? They already have a pure body? Lin Tian frowned. He waved his hand casually. 3 golden beams of killing light flew out and chopped the 3 strange creatures into pieces. Only white fur and dark red blood were left on the ground. They are comparable to those at the early stage of the immortal ascension realm, he muttered to himself. As he spoke, he scanned the space around him. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this place was not simple. He paused for a moment, shook his head, and continued to walk deeper. Soon, he had walked another several hundred feet. The ground suddenly shook, and the ground in front of them crumbled. A huge snake with a single horn rushed out, and scales grew on its head. It flicked its tongue, and its pupils looked very terrifying. It directly regarded Lin Tian as its prey and swooped down. Quick update: the website is refreshing with few advertisements. I love this kind of website the most. You must give me a good review. Lin Tian raised his hand. Golden divine light flickered as he slapped down the rees. Pooh! The serpent was comparable to an elite at the second sky of the connecting immortal realm, but facing Lin Tian's slap, it couldn't resist at all. It was directly smashed into pieces, leaving behind a pool of blood and minced meat. Lin Tian's steps were calm, and his immortal body seemed very light. He walked along a straight path, all the way into the depths of this space. Not long after, he stepped into a continuous blood-red mountain. There were many withered old trees in the mountain. There was not a single leaf on the branches. As gusts of wind blew past, the old branches swayed as if ghosts were waving their arms, trying to lead people to the 9 serenities hell. It gave people a gloomy feeling. Lin Tian walked forward. His eyes scanned the old trees, and rays of golden light flashed in his eyes. Whoosh! 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 All around, the withered old trees suddenly moved. They actually extended far away, enveloping Lin Tian. Lin Tian had obviously seen through the strangeness of these old trees. He did not panic. He directly used the divining divine art to support the Sun Ocean. The majestic power of the king's territory immediately spread out in all directions, shattering all the branches. His footsteps were gentle, and he did not stop at all. He continued to walk forward. Ta-ba! Walking in the mountains, because of the dead silence around him, his footsteps became even more ear-piercing. He walked all the way into the depths, and soon 4 hours had passed. During these 4 hours, he encountered various strange creatures one after another. There were demonic trees, malicious spirits, blood spirits, rotten corpses, and even densely packed bone claws that rushed out from the ground. It was as if they wanted to drag him into a dark hell. It was very demonic, but they were all easily destroyed by him in the end. I clearly felt that this space was very dangerous before, but now... He frowned slightly. Naturally, he didn't want to encounter any great danger. Instead, he clearly felt that this place was very dangerous, but it was very easy to walk all the way here. He didn't encounter any danger at all. This was a little strange, and it made him feel uncomfortable. It was as if a pair of cold and bloodthirsty eyes were staring at him in the dark, making him feel very uncomfortable. I hope I'm overthinking it, he muttered to himself. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He still looked very careful as he stepped into the depths. In the blink of an eye, another 2 hours had passed. During these 2 hours, he still encountered all kinds of evil spirits, but they were nothing. With his cultivation, he easily crossed them and killed all the evil spirits that pounced on him. At this time, he finally reached the depths of this space. In front of him was a broken mountain, and he saw a withered figure in a black robe in front of him. There's someone here? He immediately revealed a shocked expression. He clearly felt the fluctuation of life from this black-robed figure. It was not a demonic spirit, but a living person. In front of him, the black-robed figure clearly sensed that someone was approaching. He suddenly turned around and looked at Lin Tian. Lin Tian finally saw the true appearance of the black-robed figure. It was an old man with a face full of wrinkles, and his eyes were a little sunken. The second level of the connecting immortal realm? The black-robed old man stared at Lin Tian, and a trace of surprise flashed across his face. His sunken eyes narrowed slightly into slits. When I discovered this place by chance, I spent a lot of effort to enter. I didn't expect that a little cultivator at the second level of the connecting immortal realm could enter this place. Interesting, really interesting. The black-robed old man's voice was a little hoarse, like 2 pieces of glass rubbing against each other. It sounded a little harsh. Hearing his words, Lin Tian was slightly shocked. This black-robed old man had been in this place for a long time? He secretly focused and silently sized up the old man. Soon, a strange look flashed across his eyes. With just a simple look, he could feel how terrifying this black-robed old man was. His cultivation was very high, and he should be at the enlightenment realm. Buzz! Suddenly, in his sea of consciousness, the divine sword vibrated slightly, and a faint 7-colored light rippled out in his sea of consciousness. Lin Tian was shocked. He subconsciously looked in the direction of the 7-colored light rippled out in his sea of consciousness. His gaze fell on the mountain in front of him, and then his body trembled again. As far as the eye could see, Broken Mountain was precipitous, and it was covered with sword markings, causing him to tremble with a single glance. Those sword markings were like peerless divine swords that seemed capable of destroying everything. This is... His heart trembled. The reason the divine sword was trembling was because of these sword runes? Staring at these sword runes, he was completely shocked. For a moment, he forgot about his surroundings. Subconsciously, his right hand moved slightly, and pointed at one of the sword runes on the mountain. In an instant, a shocking sword essence spread out. It was fierce, upright, and domineering, causing the space within a radius of 100 feet around him to tremble violently, as if it would collapse in the next moment. As soon as such a powerful sword essence appeared, Lin Tian was immediately awakened. The shock on his face became even more intense. These sword runes? He was shocked. He just subconsciously pointed his sword at one of the sword runes, but it actually had such a sword power. It was too fierce and domineering. In just an instant, he instinctively felt the monstrous killing sword essence, as if it could really destroy everything. Staring at the broken mountain in front of him, he was completely stunned. In front of the broken mountain, the black-robed elder also revealed a shocked expression, and he stared at Lin Tian in disbelief. He found this space by chance and spent a lot of effort to enter it. Then, he found this place and found these sword runes. He had been cultivating carefully for several years, but he didn't understand much. But now, a little second-tier immortal cultivator came here and subconsciously emitted such a fierce sword power with just a glance, and comprehended some sword runes. How could he not be shocked? A faint light flashed through his sunken eyes. He paused, looked at Lin Tian, and said with a smile, "You can enter here with a second-tier immortal cultivation, and you can also comprehend such a powerful sword essence in an instant. Young man, you're not simple." Staring at Lin Tian, he continued, "I entered here, and so did you. I think the two of us are fated to meet. Why don't you come and comprehend together with me? I've been comprehending for several years, and I've also learned something. Later, we can discuss it together." Lin Tian looked at the black-robed elder. The other party's words were very polite, and there was a smile on his face. However, that smile made Lin Tian feel very uncomfortable. It gave him a sinister feeling, as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake. Of course, he didn't care too much. He said to the black-robed elder, "Okay." The black-robed elder smiled and looked at Lin Tian. Then, he turned his head and stared at the broken mountain in front of him again to comprehend the sword runes. Lin Tian paused, then stepped forward and sat down cross-legged 15 feet away from the black-robed elder. He raised his head and looked at the sword runes on the broken mountain in front of him. Staring at the sword runes, his eyes flashed. He felt the fierce sword essence again. The sword essence was too vast, as if it could destroy a big world. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He stared seriously at the sword runes on the mountain and tried to comprehend them. It was also at this time that the divine sword in his sea of consciousness shook slightly again. It automatically released strands of 7-colored light, weaving into his sea of consciousness, and then quickly merged into his eyes. In an instant, Lin Tian trembled slightly. He felt the whole world become bright and clear, thousands of times clearer. At this time, he looked at the broken mountain in front of him. The sword runes on the mountain were no longer sword runes. It was as if they were alive, emitting a bright light. Then, small swords condensed in midair, making clanging sounds. In the next moment, the densely packed small swords buzzed and suddenly rushed toward him like a rain of swords. In the blink of an eye, they penetrated his sea of consciousness from the space between his eyebrows, causing his sea of consciousness to stir up shocking waves. Audiobook. Towering Heaven Sword Manual? Chapter 707. The densely packed small swords buzzed in Lin Tian's sea of consciousness. An obscure profound meaning appeared in his mind, causing his mind to tremble. The sword marks on the broken mountain were actually an ancient scripture left behind by one of the 9 celestial lords, Audiobook. It was called the Towering Heaven Sword Scripture. One man walks the world, one sword dominates heaven and earth. Vaguely, a thought reverberated in his sea of consciousness. For a moment, the densely packed small swords vibrated and intertwined with each other, setting off huge waves in his sea of consciousness. Lin Tian was shocked. He was shocked by such a heroic spirit. One man and one sword wanted to dominate heaven and earth. Dominating heaven and earth, does that mean eternal life? His heart trembled slightly. The invincible ancient celestial lord had reached the end of his path of cultivation. What he thought of was only one word: eternal life. Towering heaven, eternal life. He muttered to himself. In his sea of consciousness, the small swords buzzed and gradually emitted sword power. The light was so bright that it illuminated everything. Lin Tian focused all his thoughts on his sea of consciousness. At this moment, the densely packed small swords jumped around as if they were performing for him, outlining the essence of the sword Tao. Clang! He sat cross-legged in front of the broken mountain. His body did not move, but the sound of swords could be heard. The sound of swords was ear-piercing. Vaguely, the space around him became distorted. Light swords appeared on their own, as if they were from the boundless void. They broke through the air and appeared, wanting to slash everything in the world. Clang! 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 The whistling of swords continued as streaks of sword light appeared around him. It was as if sword spirits were by his side, and they were like protectors, protecting him firmly within them. 50 feet away, the black-robed elder was shocked. He stared at this scene, extremely shocked. The elder was shocked. Even though he felt that Lin Tian's comprehension ability was extraordinary, he didn't expect it to be so powerful. He had been comprehending the sword pattern here for so long, but he didn't understand much. However, Lin Tian seemed to have comprehended the essence of the sword pattern in just a short while. Such talent made his heart tremble. This was even more monstrous than a monstrous genius. It wasn't something an ordinary person could do. He stared at Lin Tian, stunned by Lin Tian's monstrous talent. His sunken eyes narrowed slightly. Buzz! Outside of Lin Tian's body, light flickered. In his sea of consciousness, a dense number of small swords hummed. He sat cross-legged in front of the broken mountain with a solemn and serene expression. With the help of the divine sword in his sea of consciousness, he seriously comprehended the high heaven sword scripture. A swordsman must be righteous. A swordsman must be unyielding. Swordsman must be firm, Lin Tian muttered. Gradually, he raised his right hand and formed a sword finger. A small sword formed a divine shape and revolved around the sword finger. In an instant, in this space, the sky fell silent, the earth fell silent, and only the small sword was humming. Clang! Lin Tian moved his sword finger, and the small sword moved along with it. The sword's humming reverberated through heaven and earth, suppressing all the rhythm. In his sea of consciousness, the dense number of small swords moved along with it and hummed. Time flew by quickly. With the help of the divine sword at the bottom of his sea of consciousness, Lin Tian seriously comprehended the high heaven sword scripture. It was only until 3 days had passed that he stopped and slowly let out a mouthful of turbid air. At this moment, the dense number of small swords that rushed into his sea of consciousness turned into faint light and disappeared. The essence of the high heaven sword scripture was completely integrated into his sea of consciousness. He raised his head and looked at the broken mountain in front of him. The sword inscriptions on the mountain were still there, just like before. There were no changes. Those light swords that suddenly appeared just now should be related to that divine sword. It must have drawn out the essence of the sword intent, Lin Tian thought to himself. He stared at the sword inscriptions on the broken mountain and couldn't help but be surprised. He really didn't expect to obtain Aojian Tianzuan's inheritance here. The high heaven sword scripture was too powerful. It could be called a true offensive divine technique. However, why would that heavenly venerable inscribe sword inscriptions here? He was puzzled. At this moment, laughter rang out. Congratulations on comprehending the paragon's skill. 5 feet away, the black-robed old man stared at Lin Tian. His eyes narrowed into slits, like a venomous snake. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He felt very uncomfortable being stared at like that. I was just lucky. Senior, please continue comprehending, he replied. Continue? No need. Since you comprehended it, it means that I have comprehended it as well. The black-robed old man smiled and waved his hand. Suddenly, a large amount of dim light flashed and condensed into 49 skulls. In the blink of an eye, they completely surrounded Lin Tian. Lin Tian's expression changed. He instantly felt a bone-piercing chill that completely froze the space around him. He didn't say anything. The other party's hostility was very obvious. He directly took out a high-grade immortal sword and used the high heaven sword scripture that he had just comprehended. In an instant, the immortal sword light swept out in all directions, turning into a peerless storm that swept out. The 49 skulls trembled and were almost cut into pieces. However, they didn't shatter in the end and firmly suppressed the surroundings. The black-robed old man's sunken eyes flashed with a wisp of light. Good, good, good! What a good paragon skill! You can actually interfere with the technique form of this old man who is in the enlightenment state when you use it with your second-tier cultivation base. The black-robed old man was a little excited. His voice was like the friction of glass. Did you think that this old man sincerely invited you to comprehend it from the beginning? Looking at Lin Tian, the black-robed old man said sinisterly. To be able to enter this secret place with your second-tier cultivation base, this old man felt that you were very extraordinary. I wanted to see if you could quickly comprehend the things on the Broken Mountain. I didn't expect that it would be so fast. As the black-robed old man spoke, the 49 skulls emitted rays of dim light, pressing towards Lin Tian in waves. This is the Sorcerer Tribe's soul-seizing array. With this array, I can seize your soul and integrate it into my body to refine it. When the time comes, I can quickly master everything you know. Naturally, the paragon skill you learned here will be the same as well. Although there is a price to pay for using this technique, it's obviously worth it for that paragon skill. 1. The dim light emitted by the 49 skulls became denser, suppressing everything around them. Lin Tian's expression changed greatly. At this moment, he felt as if he had fallen into a swamp. He struggled with all his might, but it was useless. At the same time, he felt pain in his head, as if something was slowly being pulled out of his body. He quickly used the Tianyi soul technique to stabilize his soul body. At the same time, he used more techniques to fight against the old man. It's useless. Connecting immortals against Wujin. Even if you have unparalleled talent and heaven-defying paragon skills, what can you do? The black-robed old man sneered. As soon as he finished speaking, the dim light emitted by the 49 skulls became even denser, completely isolating the surrounding space. Damn it! Lin Tian was shocked and angry. He used one technique after another to fight back, but it was really useless. Just as the black-robed old man said, the difference in cultivation between the two of them was too great. Even if he burned his life force now, it would be useless. Dong! Suddenly, a soft roar came from the bottom of the Broken Mountain. It was as if a loud shout came from the dead space, shocking Lin Tianyi and the black-robed old man. Looking at the Broken Mountain, the black-robed old man's eyes flashed with a strange light. There are other things in this Broken Mountain, boom! The space shook violently, directly interrupting the black-robed old man's words. The Broken Mountain suddenly collapsed, and a gust of wind and waves swept out, bringing pieces of broken rocks in all directions. The black-robed old man's expression changed. What is this? Pfft! The violent storm swept over, and the black-robed old man was sent flying. He rolled more than 100 feet away like a scarecrow. At the same time, Lin Tian also suffered a great disaster. He was also sent flying by the storm. A mouthful of blood came out of his mouth, and he only felt that his internal organs were displaced. However, he was somewhat lucky at this time, because the black-robed old man had used 49 skulls to surround him. At this moment, they helped him block most of the terrifying force. Ah! The black-robed old man's scream sounded from a distance. The 49 skulls were condensed by the light of his origin. At this time, all 49 skulls were shattered. He suffered an extremely terrible backlash, and he kept vomiting blood in the distance. Lin Tian rolled on the ground and struggled to stand up. He took out 3 Baodan pills from the stone ring and swallowed them. The energy contained in the pills quickly healed his injured body, allowing him to recover quickly. These Baodan pills were all refined by him in the small village in preparation for breaking through the Divine of Heaven mountain. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the Broken Mountain. The Broken Mountain had already collapsed. Below it, a monstrous demonic light rushed out, covering the entire sky in the blink of an eye, causing the originally dim space to become completely dark. A loud laughter sounded from it. Finally condensed and formed. This world will tremble for this lord. Billowing demonic sounds swept in all directions. Boom! A monstrous light beam rushed into the sky, suppressing the 9 heavens and 10 earths. In an instant, the entire 4th heaven trembled. In an instant, in this land, in many large clans, the enlightened realm old ancestors opened their eyes from seclusion, and their expressions changed greatly. This aura, the great Tao, is shaking. Even a Nirvana realm expert is only SOS, so could it be, in this world, someone has reached the Chaos Emperor realm? Emperor's aura? At this moment, in this heaven, every enlightened realm old ancestor felt terrified, and they couldn't help but tremble. Boom! In the blood-red space, demonic light overflowed into the sky, and the great Tao trembled. The scene was terrifying. Endless demonic light converged towards the center, causing the heaven and earth to rumble. Immediately, a tall demonic shadow appeared, surrounded by wisps of blood-red light, as if the immortal demon emperor was descending upon the world. 1,000 feet away, the black-robed old man coughed up blood while looking at the broken mountain in horror. He couldn't help but tremble. At the same time, Lin Tian also trembled slightly, and his face suddenly became a little pale. He once saw the nether demonic dragon at the peak of the Nirvana realm in the 2nd heaven. It was very terrifying and intimidating, but at this moment, compared to this demonic shadow, he felt that the nether demonic dragon was just like an ant. At this moment, staring at this tall demonic shadow, he suddenly couldn't even move a finger. He was completely suppressed by the other party's majestic demonic aura. It was also at this time that he finally understood why he felt such a great danger before. This place actually has such an existence. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.